Good morning, everyone. We're going to be starting in about 5 minutes, but we do want you all to know before we go ahead and get started that this session will be recorded. So we're going to start exactly at 8 o'clock.
Hey, Sierra.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. It's 8 a.m. now. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the HCM Modernization Webinar Training Series. My name is Sierra Wells, and I'm going to be with your training producer for today. I'm with Accenture. And as you all are aware, the state of Indiana has implemented an updated version of PeopleSoft 9.2. And with this implementation, there have been a few updated business processes as well as adjustments to your daily tasks. So We want to make sure you all are aware and informed of these updates and are confident moving forward, because PeopleSoft is going to make some of your daily tasks much more manageable and efficient. So today's webinar is specifically for human resource centralized and non-centralized employees. If you are not a part of these two groups, now is the time to drop the call. So before we go ahead and get started with the webinar, we're going to go over some quick housekeeping rules. The duration of this training will be about 4 hours long. There are going to be 2 5-minute breaks throughout this training. Throughout these breaks, you are welcome to stretch, check your emails, and grab a quick snack so you can be a little refreshed. Please make sure throughout the presentation your mics are on mute unless we are on the questions portion after each section. During the question time frame and sections, you are welcome to utilize the hand raising Teams feature to signify you would like to ask a question. Once you are called on either by myself or the facilitator for today, Jeff Wolting, you are welcome to hop off of mute to ask your question. But besides that, if you are not speaking, please make sure your microphone remains on mute. However, throughout the presentation, you are encouraged to be interactive within the chat to ask your questions and make any relevant comments. We will be monitoring the chat throughout the webinar to answer any of your questions. If there is a question that requires any type of confirmation on our end, we will be sending out a summary of answers after this webinar, along with hosting a live question and answer session on the 25th that you all are more than welcome to attend if you have any ongoing questions after today's webinar. Your agency will also be providing a data entry reference guide on the JAM site within the core HR job aid folder that you can reference after today's webinar as a resource. You are encouraged to take detailed personal notes throughout the webinar to reflect on, to write down any notes and to jot down any questions you may want to ask during the webinar or as well after the webinar on the 25th. And last but certainly not least, please participate. This is meant to be interactive. If you think of a question, I'm sure someone else may be thinking the same exact thing. So please interact within the chat, ask questions, and make relevant comments related to the material. We want this to be an interactive session. Okay, now on to optional live captions. You will have the option to utilize the live captioning feature on Teams. In order to access this feature, first select the More icon at the top of your Teams screen. It has those 3 horizontal dots at the top. Next, scroll down and select Turn Live On Captions. You should then see the live captions start to display at the bottom of your screen. And at any point throughout the presentation, if you turned on live captioning, if you would like
He's been muted.
Okay, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So now on to training team introductions really quick. Our main training facilitator for today will be Jeff Wolting, and we will also have some subject matter experts hop on to answer any of your questions. So first, Jeff, do you want to hop off and mute really quick just to do a quick introduction?
Yep. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to go back on camera here. My name is Jeff Wolting. Most of you know me, but there are a few in this room that probably don't. I am over HR data entry and HR metrics for state personnel.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff. We're excited for today. Next, on to our subject matter experts. Marcy, if you're online, do you want to hop off and mute really quick to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, this is Marcy Radio with State Personnel. Good morning, everyone.
Thanks, Marcy. Ashley, if you're here, do you want to introduce yourself really quick?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Ashley, and I'm with Shared Services and HR Data here at State Personnel.
Thanks, Ashley. Jordan?
Hi, everybody. Jordan Bolden, State Personnel.
Thank you. And Brandy?
Hi, Brandy Hooten with GMIS.
Awesome. And then myself, again, Sierra Wells, I'll be your producer for today. Now onto webinar core audience. So again, this webinar is specifically designed for individuals in human resources within centralized or non-centralized roles. If this does not include you, kindly please drop the call. And then a quick course overview. Within this webinar, we will be discussing two main topics: Smart HR templates, a feature within PeopleSoft, and fluid position data, fluid job data, managing personal data, and approvals. So that's going to be the bulk of the information that we walk through today. And then onto a quick course agenda. This is an estimated schedule. So today's agenda will be broken down into three main sections: the introduction, which we're walking through right now. Then we'll move on to Smart HR, which is broken down into several sections, which will last about 90 minutes, again, in estimation. And then we will conclude today's webinar with fluid position data, fluid job data, personal data, managing the data, and approvals. Again, this is all an estimation of time for today's schedule. And lastly, upon completion of this webinar, you should be able to process Smart HR templates and understand how to add, update, and manage position, personal, and job data. So with that being said, I'm going to go and hand the mic over to our facilitator today, Jeff Wolting.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Before we begin doing a demonstration, a few quick housekeeping things. So I'd like me to go ahead and share my screen here. One second. Oh my gosh, sorry. Here, can you share the slides? I'm having a problem.
Yeah, sure. I can go back and share really quick.
I'll let you just do the slides and I'll do the demo. So most of this presentation will be demonstrations. So we've only got a few quick slides here that we've got to cover before each section. Then we will be diving straight into PeopleSoft 9.2, because that's where we've got to spend most of our time. So the main differences in 9.2 for centralized versus non-centralized are pretty similar, but not much. For centralized HR, we will be hiring employees through success factors, just like we do today. There is no change whatsoever. Even on the HR data side, when we go to process your hires, it looks the same for us. So for centralized hires and contingent workers, they're the same. So for non-centralized, though, they will now do data entry or hires into smart forms. We'll be covering that tomorrow with the non-centralized agencies, but it's good for this group of centralized agencies to know that in the future, non-centralized agencies will be using what we call these smart HR templates. I also call them smart HR forms. That will allow that hire information to come to HR data for review to make sure individuals aren't already in the system and all the data is complete and filled out. Personal payroll action forms or PPAF forms are going away. We will not be utilizing those. So today, instead of you fill out a PPAF, in the future, you will be filling that information in PeopleSoft 9.2 to be routed to HR data for review. And this lastly, the benefit eligibility will be processed through workflow. So all the rules for benefits have been built in. So that's why we need to make sure that we are doing all of these new data points correctly and accurately in 9.2. All right, next slide, please, here. Again, family status changes. So today in Job Data 9.1, we have family status changes. We will not have those on Job Data in 9.2. What will happen is that all life events, family status changes will happen through employee self-service and flow to benefits rather than being triggered by job data. We're going to use what we call fluid position data to create position updates and fluid job data to create job data updates. The term fluid is a 9.2 term that basically just means moving tiles, but it is a new way of viewing job data as well as data entry. So we really need to look to make sure we learn this, because in a year, classic job data and classic position data, that view we see today, is going to go away. All right, next. We're not going to cover it today, but I do want to make sure that you guys are aware that in 9.2, we are turning the I-9 functionality for entry for tracking purposes only. So for HR, you'll be able to enter in I-9 information into PeopleSoft 9.2 and to track dates and things of that nature and report out of. There is a job aid that will be in JAM to cover this, but we won't be covering it today. Next. All right, so smart HR templates, we're going to cover all of them. I don't think I'll take 90 minutes, but I do want to try to hit them all. Next. The three terms that you'll hear constantly are job data, position data, and personal data. I'm going to be using these throughout all the sections today. So just to refresh your memory, job data has anything to do with the work. Position data has to do with the position. And the personal data is like your name, social security number, employee address, all that personal information. When we talk about updating via smart forms or fluid, we'll be utilizing those methodologies to update one of these three areas today. Okay. It's important to know the relationship between job data, position data, and personal data. When we're adding a new hire into the system, you have to have all three. You start with it, make sure you know the employee's information that you're adding to the system, know which position they're going on to, and that will flow into the job data. So as we go through doing smart forms and hiring individuals today, keep in mind we have to have all three of these informations first. Next. All right. Smart HR templates are created by administrators to be simple and streamlined for users. As you'll see when we do this demonstration today for smart HR forms, it is a way to minimize the number of fields you must fill out in order to do a certain action. Think of smart HR forms as fillable like PDFs, and we'll get into that. It will also allow us to do workflow through 9.2 instead of IoT ticketing systems. It is our hope with this new smart HR templates that we've created that the only IoT tickets field HR or non-centralized HR will need to submit are truly for issues of error messages and break fix issues. Next. All right. So again, what does these smart HR forms mean for you? Again, no more PPAFs. You know, you were doing data entry onto that PPAF form. You'll be doing that same data entry, the same fields on these forms, these smart HR forms. Non-centralized will do their hiring through smart HR templates. We'll be covering that tomorrow with the non-centralized agencies. Again, with centralized agencies, we will continue to use success factors. The smart HR templates will be routed through HR data for review. So many of the current electronic PPAFs that we have today are transitioned over to smart HR forms, and we'll see that. All right, next. And lastly, I'm going to show you guys real quick in the slides how to get where we're going to be demonstrating today. Smart HR forms are under Workforce Admin, then Smart HR Template. So I want to make sure that you know, as we move into 9.2, there's a lot you do through tiles. Smart HR forms are not in tiles. All right, next. There are three submenu options under Smart HR. There's Smart HR Transactions, which is how you use to submit HR transactions. There's Transaction Status. This is once you've submitted your transaction, you can see if we've processed that transaction or not. This is also where you will see if we push back or deny a request. This is also where you'll go back in to review that transaction. If we pushed it back, you can edit, amend, and send back to us. Thirdly, the managed transactions is for HR data. They're the only ones that will have that third menu options for the Smart HR. That is how Ashley's group will manage Smart HR forms and approve. All right, next. All right, so to the first 90 minutes, we're going to cover the Smart HR transactions, and I'm going to show you each Smart HR form, what it's used for, and how to fill it out. Next. All right. When you click on that, there is a little icon here where you can just use the lookup feature to select the Smart HR template. I will tell you there's only about a handful of 15 or 16 templates, depending on what your access is. So it's not hard to search. Just bring up the one lookup icon and hit create transaction to the right. Next. Here are the current smart forms that are out there, and I'm going to walk through each one of these slowly to make sure that you guys kind of understand. And we're going to cover these one at a time through the demo. These are based upon your security. So no one will have all of these smart forms. The first smart form is SOI CWR add RUPD. Basically what that means is CWR is our abbreviation for contingent worker or contractor. So as you can see, those first three smart forms have the letters CWR. Those are for contractors. That is how our contractor coordinators will update addresses, emails, or phone numbers. In 9.2, we created a separate security role that is static for contractor coordinators, and they will have access to the forms that have that CWR.
Should these screens be flipping?
You should be on Smart HR templates.
Yes, just with the 3 bullet points.
Yep, but look at you see the form names there, Stephen?
No. I got a gray box to the right.
Okay. We will skip this and I will do that in the demo then. Thank you, Stephen.
I can see it though, Jeff. So
I
I think
can.
can too.
I think
Yeah,
it's a
I can
Stephen
too.
problem.
I can see it.
Sorry, Stephen.
I stand alone. I'll try and refresh. Is that what I should do?
I can't see it either, Stephen. It's Marcy.
I'll tell you what, we'll go ahead and get in the demo anyway, because we're going to be hitting all of these again. In this webinar, I want to make sure to hit everything at least twice, just to make sure that I've hit home on a lot of things. So let's move on, Sierra. We'll look at this in the demo. We'll cover these forms again. With most of these templates, they will route to HR data. I will tell you that some of these smart forms will hit the database directly instead of routing to HR data. Again, these smart forms are used for centralized and non-centralized, and it will tell you whether or not it goes to approval or not based upon the description to the right, and we'll get into that. All right, next, Sierra. All right, let's hop into the demo, and this is where I will take the screen. Let me make sure I'm logged into my environment. Share. See here. All right, can everybody see the home screen here?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, I am logged in as myself, so I will have access to all the Smart HR forms. But again, that navigation for Smart HR, I will use the nav bar over here, Navigator, Workforce Administration, Smart HR, and here are my 3 choices. To submit HR, you just click on Smart HR Transactions. When you click the lookup, there you can do the drop down, but we don't have that many smart forms. So it's recommended you just click the lookup icon to look at the smart form you want. Stephen, can you see these?
Yes.
Okay. So here are the list that was on the slide of the Smart HR forms. So this first one here with the CWR, that's the contractor form to change an address. So any of these are that have CWR will be permission for the contractor coordinator, and this form is how they can update the specific information on the description. For non-centralized agencies, they will have this SOI hire EMP. EMP stands for employee. So they will have this non-suspectors hire smart form. Think of this as a direct hire today, but non-centralized will be utilizing this form. Okay. Success factors will automatically be flowing into a smart HR form for HR to review like it does today. For centralized employees, we encourage employees to go through self-service. However, because you guys are in HR, we know not always can everything be done through self-service. You will have access to some employee smart forms as a field HR individual. You can update an employee's address, email address, or phone number. For address and email, these will route for approval, mainly for formatting purposes. Phone number will not. This hire CWR form will be how contractor coordinators hire contractors into 9.2. So today we have our contractor coordinators submit the Excel sheet, the IoT ticket down to HR data, who then retypes that information in 9.2. This form will allow the contractor coordinators to submit one contractor at a time to HR data for review. This form will also make sure that we don't have that contractor already in the system. Next, we have SOI hired W-2 only. Centralized HR will have access to this form. This form is to only be used for what we call W-2 employees. Now, this is a new concept for 9.2. Today, many of these employees are in 9.1 as POIs. However, they get a paycheck from the auditor. Therefore, in 9.2, we have to label them as employees. We will be converting a group of employees from POIs to employees for 9.2. This W-2 group will consist of board members, students, patients, inmates, National Guard, by specific job codes. When you need to hire a board member or one of these groups that is in that category, centralized agencies will use this SOI hire W-2 only, instead of not through success factors, but through this form. It will route to HR data for us to review. This form is for AOS only. This form allows AOS to update the FICA status of employees. So that's pretty tight number. Personal data for contractors will be for the contractor coordinators. SOI personal data for employees. This will be how field HR and centralized and non-centralized will submit name changes, social security name changes, and date of birth. Of course, this will route to HR data for approval, so that way we can have our downstream effects, downstream tasks, I say, to make sure that we notify the appropriate parties once we've made that update in our system. SOI retire EMP. I'm going to put that with the term EMP down here below. So the retire and term, both of those will directly hit the database when field HR enters those in, and we will not see them in HR data. Same thing with the term contingent worker. HR data will not see these. These will automatically happen. And then here is our template that you guys, we have this in 9.1 today. You won't see it, but it's behind the scenes. That's a smart form that SuccessFactors uses to get us higher information. So I'm going to pause real quick. I know that's a lot of information. Are there any questions yet?
Jeff, Melissa Green had a question about, is HR responsible for adding board members? And they are not. There are folks who will have access to enter these things into the system. Board members and commissions will not go through HR. There's one more question, but I can't see who it is.
I think it's me.
Oh, hi,
This is
Jan.
Jan. Jeff, my question is, with terms, will there be workflow that goes with that? And will that workflow go to payroll as well? Or will they just pull that information from reporting in PeopleSoft?
Good question. So for terms, the person that enters it in, if they use this SOI term smart form, the person that enters that term that won't need a workflow because they hit the save button. It won't go to HR data for review. So once they do that,
Okay.
it will update job data. Now, adding that row on job data will create what we call triggers. It will trigger to payroll to cut a final check. It will trigger to absence management for any balance payouts. So our actions in PeopleSoft will have triggers to other modules. So you will not be the only one seeing that term.
Great, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions?
I had one about contract worker transfers. What template would that be?
Right now, that if there is a transfer on the rare occasion we didn't get one built for that, it'll just be a quick ticket to us, Stephen.
Okay, because the DFR, they kind of move contractors around quite a bit. So
Yeah,
the answer.
we plan on getting a smart HR form post go live on that one.
Perfect. Thank you.
Jeff, I have a question. Whenever in the past, we've had to create like a manual PPAF if someone wasn't working on their last day. So how has that process changed when it comes to those types of terminations?
Okay. So I think, and Ashley, correct me if I'm wrong, this will still cover that, right?
You will be able to put the last day worked in there. It's
Yep.
actually a mandatory field on there.
So I will do that term real quick here. Let's just go term somebody. Let me grab somebody. Let's grab a house or rep person. Why not? So here's the term one that you guys be using a lot. I think today it's an electronic PPAF. It'll automatically fill out the ample record once you put in the ID. You put the effective date. So if they were effective the 22nd, continue. And we're gonna go through a lot of these smart forms. So good question. Goodness, slow. You'll notice that the only fields on this smart form are for that last day worked, which you can pick.
Is the
So-
effective date gonna be the day after like we do now?
Yep.
Thank you, Jeff.
You'll notice that it'll change the BAS group for benefits and termination. That's a new change for 9.2. It'll automatically do that. Comments in there, hit save and submit. And what this tells you that if there are any errors or it'll route to HR data, otherwise it'll be complete. So if I go back to the transaction status, you can see I received the error. They may have already been terminated the system, but that's how you can review your transaction. Back.
Hey, Jeff, it's Jan.
Yeah.
Are we providing a recommendation on adding comments or things like that? Is that a preferred thing that we want folks to do, or does it depend on the action?
Okay. I would say that at any time there's a note section, put in notes, especially if you think they're needed. Keep in mind they are saved in the system. For smart HR transactions, for retirement and terminations where you know they're hitting the database, no one's probably going to read the notes unless it airs out, but it's still a good idea to put the notes in. For all of the transactions that you know are going to route to HR data, yes, we expect notes, we expect attachments, and we'll be covering a lot of that, especially the notes and attachments in the fluid job data section.
Thank you.
All right, are there any more questions?
Jeff, Taylor had a question if there was a 30-day limit to submit data into the system.
Good question. Okay, so in 9.2, luckily, because we have changed and rebuilt our security for 9.2, we are allowing future data transactions, future data transfers, anything future dated. Likewise, you can put in things that are historical in nature. But keep in mind, everything we do in 9.2 now will cause triggers. If you enter in a termination that is more than 30 days, it will cause triggers to all the other modules who may have additional work to do. But it will allow you to do it. It just may give you a warning that's more than 30 days and is not typical. Any other questions? I will tell you that smart HR forms are only for job data and personal data. Smart HR forms are not for position data. These smart HR forms are only top of stack, which means it can only add a row after the last effective date on job data. So if on job data, there is a row for tomorrow, you cannot enter a smart HR form for today. When we get into fluid job data, I will show you how to what we call insert rows or edit or change historical rows. The smart HR forms are only what we call top of stack. And that's a big point to hit home. So any questions about that?
Are you going to walk through an example of that, Jeff?
Yes, when we get to fluid job data, I will show you guys how to do correct job data. So let's take a look at some of these forms real quick here. So for
Jeff, I'm sorry. There was
ahead.
one last question in the chat. It was from Catherine. And her question was, can anyone see the status, or is it only the requester that can see the status of a transaction?
It will be HR data and the requester will have access to review that information.
Thank you.
So I'm going to update an employee's email. We will create a transaction. I will go over to my Excel sheet here. I will grab another employee. I will pick today's effective date, hit continue. And you will notice that these are my only options. You will not have AD email. This is in this environment, we still had it, but you will not have AD email, but you'll have these other types. So I will tell you that you must have at least one email address preferred. So make sure to mark that preferred if that's what you want it to be for that employee. But again, employees can do it through employee self-service. This form is just to also allow HR to do it to help out that employee when there's rare occasion that they can't do it through self-service. Save and submit, and that's it. That is a smart HR form for you. I'll let you guys see the list here of smart forms here. I want to talk about this one because this is probably the one I see a lot being used, is the personal data for name changes, date of birth changes, and social changes. You have a new employee this time. What you'll see here is that when this form comes up, it asks for first name, last name, date of birth, national ID, comments. A smart HR form needs to be filled out in its entirety. You cannot just go in here and put in a date of birth. If you leave the name blank, it's going to submit blanks to HR data. Likewise, you can't, if it's a social security change you're trying to do, you cannot only enter in the social security number. So prior to submitting HR transaction form, make sure that you have this current information, fill it out, and only make the change that you need. So for instance, if I were to do my date of birth change, I would still want to make sure to put my first name and last name in here, then make that change to my date of birth. Again, I would have to put my social in here, which I'll just put a random one in here. Otherwise, it will submit a blank to HR data for that social. So please remember that when you fill out a smart HR form, You must fill it out in its entirety. For name changes, date of birth changes, and national IDs, just like today, we ask that you fax or secure fax line a copy of the Social Security card, because in 9.2 that will be required per AOS, that we have a copy of all of those cards for any of the changes. That way, HR data can then make contact with benefits, with INPERS, with IoT as necessary for some of these changes, especially name changes. We have to notify a lot of individuals. Are there any questions related to this smart form for name changes, date of birth, or social changes?
Yeah, Jeff, there is a question in the chat about submitting pay rate changes for inmate workers, but no changes, no questions about what you just referenced.
Inmate work change inmate workers. We will get to that. We'll talk about that in fluid job data. Who asked that question, Marcy?
Sorry, Jeff. It is, sorry, I lost in there. Trulina Buck.
She's with ICI.
So today they are in there as POIs. They will be EM employees in the future, and we will talk about adjustments for that. Okay.
Tara Odell is asking, can you have another window open to see the employee info?
Exactly what you need to do. Yes, please do. And when we get these in HR data, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to see what you submitted. We're going to have a window open to what it is currently so we can see what you're changing. That's why we only have these small fields. Each form's broken up, so we don't have to look at too many fields to see what you're trying to change. But we will have that window up as well on our screens when we approve and review these transactions.
Yeah, and just, Jeff, there was a couple of questions about, does the name have to match exactly what's on the Social Security card? And Ashley weighed in. It does. It has to match exactly what's on the Social Security card.
I will tell you the reason that we agreed with AOS to manage the fact that we are going to look at all Social Security cards is because AOS is still planning on doing what they do today and taking all of the employees in PeopleSoft, take their names and Social Security numbers, and run them against the U.S. Department of Revenue for mismatches, name mismatches specifically. So if our name does not match what's on the Department of Revenue, we are going to be being reached out to by AOS to first the state personnel to see what copy of the card we have, or you have, and then go from there. So yes, they have to match the name exactly what's on the card. Any other questions?
There's a question from Haley asking in the comments if we need to list the wrong date of birth or wrong Social Security number when submitting the transaction.
Again, notes are always helpful. So in the notes section, if you put, I am changing date of birth, I am changing social, that will only help us out. But anything that to help us approve that transaction or make it easier on end is always welcome. Anything else? Okay. So as you can see, just like today, when you guys have name changes, social security number changes, you submit an IoT ticket. Instead of going through IoT, you'll just go in here, fill out this form, fax in that copy of the social card, and HR data will review. I'm going to cancel out of this transaction. Take a look and see what else we got here. Let's take a look at the W-2 only. And Marcy, I know you mentioned that this will not be HR, but HR will have access to this form just because it's always better to have all access. I'll create transaction. New employee ID, put effective date, hit continue. Uh-oh, we're in the wrong environment, Ashley. Okay. That has been fixed in a later environment. I can't show you that one, I guess.
Am I the only one that can't see your screen?
Good question. Anybody else not see my screen?
I can see it.
I can see it.
It's small, but I can see it.
I see it.
I can make it bigger. Is that better?
That is much better.
Well, I can't see you at all, so.
That happens when you get quite a few people in teams sometimes, Laura. So we've talked about employee name, SSN, date of birth. Retired employee is just like the term. Record number will automatically fill out. Got your effective date, hit continue. Got your last day worked, term, comments, save and submit. So your term and your retirement are just the same. Cancel. Let's look at employee address. Again, employee addresses can be updated through self-service. However, HR does have that option to submit this. As you can see, here is the address information. Very important to fill out all these fields. The reason that these route to HR data is we look at formatting to make sure that they are within the format guidelines that we have in HR data. Make sure we don't exceed certain character limitations. Again, you'll want to compare to what's in personal information to what you're submitting. But this is how to submit an address change for an employee.
Hey, Jeff.
Yes.
What environment is this? Did that default to business on that address?
Yes. I'm in UHC.
Okay. One thing that I want to make sure we call out is if we're doing employee address changes, it's very important that the employees have a mailing address or a home address for payroll purposes.
So I will tell you that luckily you can't delete an address through the smart form, Randy. So employees will automatically have to have a home address already. This would be they can only change the home address unless, does that make sense?
Yes.
If we get a blank form, we're going to deny it.
Okay.
Now for tomorrow and non-centralized, bring that up.
Gotcha.
When we hire employees through SuccessFactors, that's part of our process to make sure they have a home address. Any questions?
Mountain Armin wants to know if there's a character limitation when submitting a smart form. I assume you mean in the comments, John? Or in any of the fields?
There's no character limit for the forms that are routing to HR data for approval, but we will truncate them and format as we get them in. If someone tries to do something crazy.
Melissa's asking, is there something that triggers a notification to Auditor of State that there is a county change?
Good question. So we had this discussion with the auditor. What they are going to do is they are going to look at year end, I believe, Marcy, and run a query. Is that correct, Randy?
Yeah, we have a way that when employees are moving, we look at a query to make sure that we've updated their county or that we reach out to them. And then there's also a spot for employee self-service for them to do tax forms, and that would include county information as well.
I will tell you, when we get into fluid job data, you will see some fields that are new because of AOS. One of those is a county tax field that we will show you guys later.
Amber's question is, can you update an address for a former employee?
Yes. It will route to HR data, and we'll be looking at it. And if it's real far back, we'll probably ask you why. But yes, it'll let you submit it at least.
Stephen is asking, will we see an employee's changes that they make in self-service?
You can see the changes. I don't think you'll be notified as HR.
And Tammy Lucas has a question about where we will enter people being not eligible for rehire. And Tammy, we will get to that later in the training.
And I believe if I go down to the term employee, let's try that. Hold on. Let's grab it. Yeah, because this is just a regular EFR. So we will show you how to do that later. Any other questions? Actually, I thought our term had a reason code, didn't it?
I thought that was a drop down.
I know it. Well, maybe it's the environment. Let me just. There should be a reason code that you guys should be able to select on this term Smart HR form. Let me try a different environment. Is STG still available?
Yeah, you should be able to get into STG. I think we defaulted the reason code initially for terms to just default to eligible for rehire.
You shouldn't.
Resignation eligible for rehire.
If not, there's always more than one ways to do things.
Yeah, I think it just defaults because they're.
That environment was not right.
But it auto populated that, right? It defaulted to the resignation eligible for rehire.
Correct.
Okay.
So there's where it is. These are your options. That environment was not, I'm not sure why that environment had that old form. Okay, that's a good question. Glad I was able to show you guys the correct form here. But it's similar, just allows you to select that reason code. But as you'll see today, there's always more than one way to submit things and take care of things with this new 90 system. And you could also submit that term through Fluid Job Beta 2 as well, but we'll show you that later. Any other questions?
Jeff, Alan Aiken has a question. Will SPD payroll be notified when an employee is terminated? And does the termination still go to IoT for network access?
Based upon current practice of giving you guys a copy of the PPAF, that is going away. So there is no current plan to notify payroll of these.
That the system will update automatically, correct, Jeff?
Correct.
So
Correct.
they don't need to be aware of the changes by getting the form. It will just automatically hit the system.
Correct.
So Jeff, can you hear me, Jeff?
Yep.
So when employee terms, we have to actually print off their last check and mail to them. So if we don't know if somebody's termed, we wouldn't know when to do that.
You mean their last pay stub, Alan?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so we can talk more about that. You'll still have that ability and you'll get that from a query. We're not going to send out notifications when someone terms, but you'll be able to run a query for all the terms that you have for that particular pay period.
So every pay period, we got to run a query to find out who left. Correct?
Yeah, I think that we can come up with a better thing later, as far as how you are getting terminated associates their pay stub. But yeah, for go live to keep your same process, there's a query for you.
Okay, so just another payroll question. Sorry, people, but when somebody's NEFR'd, where you take all their leave days away, the system automatically do that on the last paycheck, correct?
So right now, the only thing that's automated is the eligible for rehire, I think, for the payouts. I don't know if we have anybody from absence on here, but if when you're termed, you will be paid out that amount unless you do an adjustment and say that you don't want them to be paid.
Okay, so it's still the same way it is now then. Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah. Retiree leave conversion is also a payout from absence management. So you can do a request for that through absence. And if you're an HSE payroll person or you have those duties, that should be covered in the payroll training as well.
Yeah, so HR stopped doing payroll. Okay, next. Any other HR questions? All right, I think let's try to do that W-2 now that we're in this new environment. Here's W-2, here's my action reason. So for hiring board members, inmates, patients, here's the smart form. Must fill it out in its entirety, name, date of birth, all the applicable information, gender, national ID, address, make sure you select the right county, phone, email type, marital status, position number. You will notice that in 9.2, the definition of employee is changing a little bit. While these will have a org instance of employee, their employee class will have W-2 only. And I'll show you that again when we get into job data, but you will be able to tell these individuals separately from other employees by their employee classification. So this is the same field you have with classified, unclassified, working tasks. W-2 employees will have W-2 only. So you need to know the pay group, employee type, absence management pay group, and we will get into these fields in job data as well. Comp rate code, comp rate frequency. They are not part of our benefit plan, so these default. So this is the smart form for W-2 onlys. Any questions on this? They do go into position numbers. The job code defaults to NONEMP or board member or student. They're out their own job codes now.
Jeff,
Yes.
if we pull a staffing report in this new in the new system, will it also pull those? I'm going to call them oddball, but is it still going to list those as well?
I can't answer for the canned delivered staffing report. I know when I query, I will be excluding them from my queries that I use. But I can't answer for the so-called canned staffing report. My guess is probably yes.
Okay.
But you will be able to differentiate by job code, Stephen. Any other questions about W-2 only employees? Uh-oh. Really? Okay. So we're back to UAT. Guys. Let me get back to smart forms. So I think we've talked about most of these. Contingent workers, employee address, employee email, employee phone number, hire contractor. I want to touch on this hire contractor form for HR. HR will not be submitting contractors to add to the system. However, I think it's good for you guys to know what happens when these forms are submitted by the contractor coordinators. Contractor coordinators will either put the employee ID in here if they're already in the system, but if they don't, it's not a big deal, and I want to show you why. When they put in that name, that they're going to add a contractor, when this form gets submitted to HR data, it will run possible matches in the system against what they're submitting prior to coming to HR data. If there's a possible match, they'll say, hey, this person has first name that begins JE and last name that also begins WOL. Hey, HR data, is this a match? So we get possible matches in HR data. if we think it's a possible match, we can tie it to that employee ID before it hits the database. So that's how we can make sure that, yes, contractor coordinators are adding instances to the database, but only after we've done the system's done a match and we've verified in HR data. Any questions about that so far? What if I can do one real quick here? Required fields do have asterisks. I will tell you, when you go through the smart forms, it does pause between each field. So you want to make sure to use your tab. So Stephen, here's our answer right here. This form defaults to driver's license. And then yes, Kara, you can drop down the prefix right here and the suffix. Bigger so you guys can see what I'm doing. For contractors, they'll have an expected end date. We're hoping to use this and encourage our contractor coordinators to use this so we can better keep track of our contractors that are in the system. Contractor coordinators, there is a job aid that we will be providing to them. They will pick their business unit. When they do, they will need to pick their department like they do today. Location code. I'm just randomly picking, so nobody yell at me. This will always default to state of Indiana. They will need to pick their job code. For contractors, it's NONEMP. They will pick the supervisor. They will hit submit. Now, it's telling the contractor coordinator, hey, here's some possible matches. Is it one of these individuals? Hit select. If it is, if not, continue. Not a match, continue with hire. And it was, the person ID is created. Any questions? Now's the time, guys. I'll bring the smart forms back up again.
Jeff, how will we process, how will it be processed if, for example, we have, well, I think I just answered my own question. For centralized agencies, if we're taking a contractor from contractor to employee, then it would have to go through success factors,
Correct.
right? Okay.
And on the other side, if non-centralized were to do so, they would enter in their success factors, they will enter in their higher EMP smart form, and it will come to HR data for us to review, and we can see what's going on.
Thank you.
Hey, Jeff, I have a quick question. It might be slightly off topic to this, but I know you had mentioned all agencies were supposed to have identified contractor coordinators. My agency has not yet identified those, but we've been working diligently through it, but it's not done yet. Is HR going to have access to this, or are we no longer having access to adding the contractors into the system? Just as
Yeah, HR will not have access to this contractor forms.
Okay, just double checking. Thank you.
In the meantime, if these aren't ready for go live, just have them keep submitting tickets until we get them done. But we're going, we will do it for them in the meantime, but we eventually will want them to go in on their own.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Any other questions? Would anybody like to see any of these forms done again? I think the smart HR forms are your quick ways. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on these because again, employees should be going through employee self-service. These will be going through the contractor coordinators. So for us centralized HR, I think our biggest one we'll be using is this one, this name, SSN DOB change, and your term and your retire.
I do have a question, Jeff.
Yep.
When it seems that social security numbers are more visible on more screens than we currently have, but then also if someone has a name change, you actually want that social security card faxed to HR data.
Yes.
Where do we tell the employee that it's going to be housed?
Keep in mind that employees can also submit these through employee name changes through employee self-service where they can attach the social security number, the social security card. Okay.
Okay, but where if it is a fax situation, where are those going to be housed?
Ashley, we keep those with their file, right?
Yeah, we would put it in their personnel file.
Okay. Thank you.
And just to also add, we will have masking that will be on social security numbers and personal information in HR. So if you're on just a regular screen, the social security number is masked. If you need it, you click on it, and if you have access, then you would be able to see it at that point.
Let's see if I can show that.
And sometimes date of birth works like that as well. There are different data components through HR and now also finance that are masked by a program. So you'll see your date of birth there is masked. Yep.
Okay.
And just to add a little commentary on PII protection, we have actually done some things in the background with regard to queries. So if we had queries that were pointing to the employee table, we actually created a view that removed national ID and only included that in queries and such that people needed for, you know, vendors or whatever that would have to go to external parties and such. So it won't be readily available for everyone to just query on.
Okay. I think we will keep talking about these smart HR forms. I want to make sure you guys, there's a full list of which all these forms are that you guys can reference back to. But when we get into next into fluid job data, fluid position data, you'll start to see when you should be using these smart forms versus when you're using fluid job data or our PPAF as we like to call it today. Okay. Anything else for right now? Another question before we take a break.
Hey Jeff, it's Wesley Maynard. I do have a question. So if you were submitting like a termination PPAF and you needed to change that date, you know, if someone needed to leave earlier than their original resignation, you said that those termination PPAFs do send a trigger to other people. If you were to correct that, does it override that trigger to like payroll or?
Okay, so let's answer that in a two-part. Let me take on how you do it, and then I can let Brandy finish on what that would trigger. How you do it is, remember, smart forms only do top of stack, okay? And it does not let you correct data. So you all want to do that through fluid job data, and I'll show you how in the next section, okay? So you can definitely submit a correction PPAF, or PPAF is fluid job data. You can make that change there. It will flow to HR data for review where we can hit approve, and it will cause triggers, right, Brandy?
Yes.
Depending on the date you are changing. So if it's within the same pay period, it won't have as big of effect as if it was a different pay period.
Thank you.
Good question. Any other ones? I really want to encourage questions, guys.
Hey Jeff, it's Carmen. Show us that place whenever you put in like a change in here and then you said where you can check what you just put in.
Oh, okay, sure. I should have one out here where it aired out for some reason. I'm not sure if I'm in the right environment. It is this transaction status, and I'll show you how to, let me back out, I'll show you how to get there. So workforce admin, job information, wait, no, smart HR. So workforce admin, smart HR, and then you've got smart HR transactions to submit, and you will have transaction status to review the form submitted. Where this one got added, this one's still in the requested status, so it's still pending with HR data. This one had an error, which errors don't just not go anywhere. They go to HR data where we review the errors and try to figure out what's going on.
And can those be opened up or does that just show you what you put in? Just like if you were to like, oh, maybe I accidentally put something in incorrectly. Can you open that up to see what you just put in or?
Don't believe so. Let me see. I don't believe so. These are just to review what's going on.
Okay.
Hey, Jeff, just a question on retirement. We
Yes.
often have people who will say that they're retiring, but they may not actually qualify for full retirement or partial. So that the onus of that is going to be on HR, correct, to determine are they actually eligible, and if so, for partial or full retirement, correct?
It would be no different than today, is what my guess to be. But Brandy, can you chime in on that at all? Obviously, it's no different than today. You know, today we have the electronic PPAF for retirees, right? So don't do the smartphone, like, it's just like today, if you do the electronic PPAF for retirements, you'll do that for the smart forms, but still, onus is still on field HR as it is today.
Okay.
Any
There's
other
a question. Yeah, there's a question from Sarah, and she wanted to know if you enter something in Smart HR and you know it's incorrect, can you cancel that workflow?
Yes, absolutely. So if it is, let's see. I thought you could. I don't believe so. If this doesn't allow you to do it here, just reach out to us and we'll cancel it on our end prior to doing it. Just reach out to Ashley or myself or the HR data team.
Jeff, on that form you're on right there at the bottom, it says
Yep.
delete selected transactions. What is that for?
That is for one that's already completed. I think it is from your review. It added a CWR. It's probably from the one that went through completely, when completed. It's just a review on this page.
Thank you.
Yep,
Jeff, it looks like I can cancel it from an administrator side.
got it. Thank you. Any other questions? Let's see what that did.
When you use the smart form for like a retirement or a termination of an employee, do you also have to go into the fluid side and enter it?
No.
Okay.
So fluid, think of fluid as job data. It's just only top of stack. So when you do something from fluid, you're adding it to job data.
Okay, I got it.
Go back to, oops.
I had a question about the order thing. So it looks like you can change that last day worked, which is a change from what was automatically approved at current state. So like that usually happens when someone's out on leave or there was some other reason that they weren't here for that time before they term. Typically, HR data would be nice and give us a friendly reminder that we need to add more paths or return them from leave or something like that before they can be termed. Will we be able to go into that fluid module and make those updates after we've submitted that term, since it's automatically going to get approved? And will anyone be looking at that to like ensure that those get entered?
So we will cover how to do that in fluid job data, and we can maybe touch on this scenario. But we will not be actively stopping it. We will be maybe reviewing it through our queries at the back end. But it's gonna go through if on the front end. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not gonna stop the transactions in 9.2, but we do have a data quality queries that we check, and that's one of the things we're gonna check for is to make sure people are putting their leaves on. But the term will go through, and so it'll be on, it's on HR. Any other questions?
Will we have access to those queries that you guys will be running, just so we can maybe monitor our own agency?
I don't, not initially, Stephen, but maybe down the road we can talk about that.
Okay.
Write that down. And I think once we get into fluid job data, a lot more of the questions that you guys are asking will be a little easier to understand there too. Because Smart HR really is supposed to be just for your routine transactions and a way to quickly do something that you can do through fluid job data, and we'll see that. It's just a lot quicker to do some of these actions through the smart form. Any other questions?
Brandy wants another demonstration of a name change.
Sure.
And the uploading of the social security card, there's no way to do that.
Not this way. It'd be the secure fax through smart form. Oh, I probably should not have looked up. I should not have looked up. Let me go grab something.
So an employee, if they do something and they can attach their social security card, but HR cannot.
Right. So if an employee does it through employee self-service, they can. So here is the name change. This is for, I'm gonna put the same name in here. I don't know what their date of birth is, but I'm gonna just make something up, even though I can look at it later on. And submit. And that has now been routed to the HR department. We will review it before it hits the database. So that is how to do a name change, social security change, or date of birth. Got to enter in all the fields. So smart HRs, you have to enter in all the fields. But that is basically how to do a employee name change. So select the form, hit create, the ID in. You do multiples. You do multiples and fill out the form. PRs is for the social security number. We'll leave that alone. Any other questions on this?
On this, to make a change, I understand that we have to put all this data in, which is new rather than it defaulting. But where would we go if we just wanted to see your personal data?
There are, for the time being, there are 2 ways to view personal data, but it's no different than today. So the modify person today, Stephen, is the same as it will be 9.2. I'll back up to workforce administration, personal information.
Okay, and that just brings up the page.
That's correct.
I got you. Thanks.
And that's why we went back to that conversation about having the 2 windows open. Make sure you had that personal data open while you're doing the smart form if you need to.
Hey, Jeff, at the top of this screen, does it show you what employee you're changing?
No. You got to pay attention. So if I go back to cancel, and I hit create transaction, when it's asking you which employee you want to change, you have to know all this information prior to changing it or submitting it for change. It's a blank form. Up the forms again in case anybody has questions. When you log in on Go Live, you will not have all of these forms. You will only have the Smart HR forms you are authorized to use. So please keep that in mind.
Hey, Jeff, will the PSID be recorded on this page anywhere so you can cross-reference just in case you're having, excuse me, second thoughts that you have the correct PSID?
Let me see if I can understand. The PSID, so like for instance, when you were filling out a form, if you don't remember which one you were on.
Yeah, so say you enter the PSID in the previous screen and then you go to this screen and then you're like, oh, I don't know if I had the correct PSID. Is there a way to ensure that you have the correct PSID on that second screen?
No,
Okay.
My best suggestion would be cancel out and start again.
Hey, Jeff, Taylor asked if the VSPD queries will be available in 9.2.
Yes, so far we've tested them. There are two or three that are going away, primarily because AOS is coming into PeopleSoft. So I had some VSPD queries for payroll mismatches. Obviously, we won't have payroll mismatches in the future. So there are a couple of VSPD ones by virtue of being on the same system that are going away, but for the most part, they're all there. Okay. Anything about smart forms before we take a quick break?
Kathy wants to know if the field HR is going to have access to full social security numbers.
They will be masked, but you'll have to click on them to expand them.
Jeff, Taylor wanted to know about the VSPD queries.
Got that one.
Okay, just making sure.
Yep. Okay, we're gonna take a quick 5-minute break before we dive into the next section. I think once we start talking about fluid job data and personal data, fluid position data, a lot more of these questions and how they work with smart HR forms, when it's better to use smart HR forms, when it's better to use job data, will become more relevant. So, okay, guys, let's take a quick 5-minute break.
Okay, so it looks like we're wrapping up our first 5-minute break. Jeff, just let me know when you're ready for me to hop into section 2.
Yep, go ahead. Ugh.
Did you want me to still go over all of these?
Yeah, skip
Right.
these.
Okay.
We talked about all this in the demo. Or the next one.
Yeah, it's just taking some time to load for some reason.
That'll work. I think we can start with this. Okay. So we talked about smart HR forms. The next 2 sections that we have left to talk about today are update job data, update position data, and job data correction. And I'll talk about how to do all of those and approvals necessary. I think job data correction will be the section that for centralized HR will be the biggest change more than anything. For doing PPaths, you guys are used to doing correction PPaths. There's a little bit more to it when it comes to the data entry side on job data, and you guys will see that as we get into correcting data. I will tell you that just like on Smart HR or job data, when you enter in these transactions where the action date is just as important as the effective date you're entering in, because again, we keep talking about these triggers. You know, if you want an action to happen on a certain payroll or certain before a certain payroll runs, you've got to get it in on a certain date, or if you know, and so our timeliness of data entry becomes the utmost importance in getting things in. I will also tell you that in 9.2, because we've again updated the security, we can do future data transactions in 9.2. We're going to ask that you keep it to within a couple of weeks, because if you know like a retirement's coming up, get that in the system so we can start planning for it. It will not take away the security. All right, next slide, here. So here's kind of what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about what is fluid job data, how's that different from our PPaths, how to do data corrections. I think we probably will spend quite a bit of time on this. We will also talk about position data, which again, you will have access to certain fields on fluid position data, and we'll go into that. And then we'll also quickly talk about personal data, how to look at, how to view it mainly, because we've kind of already talked about the smart HR forms and how to update it. And then we will try to show you a little bit on the approval side, so that way you can understand when a transaction comes to us from fluid job data or fluid position data, what we see and how we work it. All right, next slide. And again, I'm going to hit these 3 definitions again: job data, position data, and personal data. Those are the 3 things you need for our system that we have in core HR. But we're going to be diving into, I think, first job data and then position data. All right, next slide. All right, fluid means adaptive. That's basically your tiles on the screen that move. They're fluid. So if you're on your cell phone, they move. That's kind of what 9.2's version of fluid is. During the current period of 9.2, I'm going to tell you that we're going into what we call fluid job data. There are going to be, for a period of time of about a year, 2 ways to view job data. One way is going away while we get used to the new way. So when we went with us going live in 9.2, I'm teaching everybody the new way of looking at job data and the new way of updating job data. Even though the old way through the menu is still there, we have got to be able to get trained on the new way, because the old way is going away, but it will still be available. Fluid job data is basically your PPAF. Anything you can do on a PPAF, you will do through fluid job data. Anything that you could think of, job reclasses, pay adjustments, all of that's still the same. I will tell you though, in 9.2, family status changes will no longer be on job data. Again, those are going to be triggered by employee self-service, so they don't need to be triggered by a row on job data. What will happen is we get into fluid job data, you'll pick your action reason codes that you want, your date, your employee ID, and it will take you to job data to make the necessary updates. I'm going to focus a lot of my time today when we're doing job data on the new fields that are related to payroll or absence management that you need to be aware of, maybe a few of the new values. There's a lot to data entry. As Sierra mentioned earlier, we have that data entry guide. It got exponentially longer now that we have more fields to data enter into in 9.2. Based upon the transaction you're trying to enter in, a lot of it's still the same as today. It's just you've got to hit a few more of those new fields that I will be pointing out. I don't want to focus too much on how to do the different types of transactions in job data, and I'll be focusing more on the mechanics of doing a transaction through fluid job data, not necessarily how to do each type of transaction. Once you submit something in fluid job data, it does go, everything goes to HR data for review. Nothing hits the database automatically. And then again, once we've submitted a job data row, we'll get into corrections. All right, next slide. All right, so we're going to quickly show you the navigation, then I'll show you again in the environment. From the Workforce Administrator homepage, there's a drop down in the top middle there. There is what they call Manage Job. That is how you enter in fluid job data rows. So you would click that tile. Next slide. So again, that tile is used to do all of your return from leaves, your promotions, your pay adjustments, that type of thing. You'll go into Manage Job. I will point out real quick here, the HR administration is how to view, whereas the Manage Job is how to update, but you can view in both. All right, next slide. All right, this is what you guys will see when you click on the Manage Job. There are many ways to look up employees, a few more than today, so it's a little easier to look for employees. You will have a few additional buttons that I'll show you. You will search for that employee and make the selection of who you want to update. Next slide. Again, I'll show you this here in the system. Once you've got the right employee, there'll be a big green button that says Create Job Action. You click on that, and it will take you to adding a row to a job data, basically, is what that does. When you create a job action, you're adding a row to job data. Next slide. Is it lagging on you, Sierra? Can you go to the next slide? There we go. Okay, so what it'll do is it will prompt you for that row that you're adding. It'll prompt you for the date, effective sequence, the action reason. Regulatory region, you always leave the same. And business unit, you shouldn't need the change. It'll automatically change if you change the PCN, and I'll show you that when we get into it. But you fill out those fields. I will tell you that if you pick an effective date that already has a row in job data, the effective sequence will automatically go to the next number. Next slide. The action reason codes 492. There's not a lot of changes for our action reason codes. I do want to point out one data entry point that we did split up the return transfer to long-term disability and return to long-term disability. We did split that up into two reason codes. I definitely want you guys to take a look at the data entry guide at all of the action reason codes and when they should be used. But for the most part, they're the same. All right, next slide. And here are some of the examples that you guys are used to seeing for the action reason codes. We're not going to get into them all today, so please refer to that data entry guide. Next slide. Oh, that's back. All right, keep going, Sierra. Yeah, reason codes. And we're going to show you all this in the system. Keep going. And this is just showing how we're selecting an action reason code. You'll hit the continue button once you've selected your next code. Keep going. All right. Once you have picked your action reason code, job data, as you're used to seeing today, has tabs across the top. They'll be on the left this time, but they're in the same order. So if you're used to looking at job data with the tabs, with the compensation tab, the payroll tab, job information tab, they'll just be on the left. They call it activity guide instead of tabs. So there's a little bit of a terminology difference, but it should look the same to you. Again, anything with the asterisks is required. Next slide. Here is an example of what you will see. So again, instead of the tabs, you'll have those menu options on the left of this activity guide. And what we'll do is we will talk about each one of these as we go through how to update each tab and what the new fields are on each tab for fluid job data. Hit next here. Okay, let's dive right into it. Stephen, did you still have a question?
No, Ashley got it.
No. Okay. All right, I apologize, guys. I got kicked off for a second there. Stephen, did you still have a question?
No, I'll lower my hand. Taylor's going to help me.
Okay.
Technology, man.
All right, let me get into the environment again. Try this again. All right, can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to hit the home button. Now, keep in mind, I am logged in myself, so I may have a few tiles more than or less than you have when you log in. I'm going to go to Workforce Administer. And here are the tiles that I have. Managed job is fluid job data. That's the same thing as managing job. Position management is fluid position that we'll get into later. So for right now, we're going to talk about managed job. Okay, on this screen again, this is, I'll make it as big as I can for you guys. These are the choices you have to look for an employee. I'm going to go grab somebody here. We're going to do a salary adjustment or something. Put the employee ID in there. What you will notice though, you guys will have two buttons here, include history and correct history. These are kind of important because if you're just adding a row, you don't need to select these. If you're correcting history, you will need to select these and we will come back to that. For now, I'm going to go include history and I'm going to hit search. Now, what it did was because I entered in an employee ID, it automatically took me to the next page. And you can see here for this employee, this Raymond Zwicker, here are the previous rows that are on job data, starting with the most recent on top. I will tell you that for any of you that happened to be around the last time we went to PeopleSoft, we had conversion rows. You may have seen them in the system. Every employee, every position will get a conversion row on job data. This is a part of our go live process. What that conversion row does is that it assigns all of the employees the new values that are necessary for the new processes in 9.2. So for instance, in 9.1 today, we don't have absence management. So this conversion row gives absence management data fields for that employee on job data. So please keep in mind that we will have a conversion row and it will be effective, I think 5.1, Brandy, right?
Yes.
Okay. To add a row to job data, I'm going to add a row here. So our last row here is 1-9. I'm going to create a job action. I'm going to pick, let's say we had a pay adjustment at the beginning of the pay period here. Once you do your effective date, your action reason code, and if you pick an effective date that already has a row on it, it will automatically update the sequence for you. I'm going to back out just a little bit here. You'll notice that we start off on the work location tab. And you have a next button here, or you can click the tab on the left. Now, as field HR, you now have the same data entry capability as HR data. So every field that we have access to change, you will have access to change here. But think of it like in Word, when you track changes on a document, this will track any changes that you make. It will not automatically hit the database. When you make a change, like adding a row here, it'll track it and it will tell HR data what you changed prior to hitting the database. So as I show you fluid job data, when you say, oh my gosh, I have access to all of these fields, you do, but it's going to come to HR data for review. So, for instance, if you need to go on override, you can do so. You can override the position. You shouldn't all, very rare circumstances you should do this, but this is how you can make the necessary changes that you need to have happen come to HR data. So as centralized HR, you have to know when it's appropriate to override as an underfill or when it's not. That is new knowledge you're definitely going to have to know. If you change the position, it'll update the information. Of course, it's one off, so it's the same information. But today I'm doing a pay adjustment as an example, so I'm just going to go to the next tab. I'm not making any changes here. And this is the same fields you see today on the work location tab. All right, on the job information tab, this is the same layout as you're used to seeing today. I will tell you that we do have a few new employee classifications types here that you'll want to get trained on, depending on what agency you're from. And we're missing a few here in this environment, but please refer to the data entry guide of when to use, like for instance, W-2 only versus judicial versus intermittent versus elected. Please keep in mind we got a few new values there. Otherwise, for the most part, this is the same page. I will tell you, unlike 9-1 today, you will not see the employee's reports to manager's name on this tab. If you want to view who this person is reporting to, you will click View Incumbents, and it will tell you the current information. It won't be a snapshot at a time like it is today. I'm going to pause there for any questions on these first two tabs that anybody might have. Any questions? I don't have my questions up.
I have
Questions? But
Go ahead.
When you're talking about using that override button, and we have the ability to change departments, location codes, et cetera, on an employee record, actually, we shouldn't be doing that. We should be updating the position. But will we have a guide of what to change, how to change if we have those things?
yep, and that would be that data entry guide that has ballooned in number of pages.
I got a glimpse.
And that was in the chat there, Stephen. For the link of that. And that's exactly correct. Because today, when centralized HR sends down and says, hey, I need this to happen, sometimes we in HR data know what you're trying to do and do it the right way for you. And that's probably not the best thing, but it's what we did to make sure that work happened. In 9.2, though, centralized HR staff are going to have to know when it's appropriate to override versus not. Any other questions?
I have one, Jeff.
Yes.
Right now, if somebody vacates a position, like a supervisor vacates a position, we have that wonkiness where it will still show that person as the supervisor in in PeopleSoft.
Yep.
Will that be different in the new system?
Yep.
Cool.
It'll look just like this. That will be vacant.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, you just mentioned when you were talking about overrides, underfills, and NDOT, of course, does a lot of underfills. So how is that related?
Related in what way?
Are you saying that this would be the place where you would correct to show an underfill?
Yep. And that's why it's important that you guys take the time to, and you've seen the data entry guide before, Lisa, I hope you have. So now, if you haven't seen that data entry guide before, please do go look at the new one, because we're going to try to cover all the scenarios in that guide of when to use override, when not to use override, how to do a leave, how to do a military leave. That's all in that guide.
I believe that's the one that was dropped in chat at the beginning of training. Thank you. Thank you.
So depending on what you're trying to do as a centralized HR, you've got to know which fields to change to submit to the HR data. Okay, I'm going to keep going here. Labor information. This is very similar to how it looks today. You guys will not be changing anything on this tab. We're going to just advise you not to change anything, but it is good for you guys to view it. If you happen to change something on this tab and it came to HR data, we would advise push back at that point, and I'll show that later on. We're gonna move on. So again, I can click next, or I can click the tab. Okay. Salary and compensation tab. Just because you can change the salary administration plan doesn't mean you should. If we see that you've submitted a salary administration plan that's different than the job code, we're going to just deny it in HR data. So just because you have access to the field doesn't mean you should be changing them. Hit cancel. So this is how it is today. Salary admin plan and grades are based upon the job code. Do have your comp rate down here. Now, the reason I chose pay adjustment is because I'm going to make an adjustment to the pay here. This is a little bit of a difference where today you would just say 15% increase, or here's a new comp rate. You can't do that now. You've got to go make that change yourself. So what you'll do is you'll come down here and here's the comp rate. Let's suppose I'm going to give a 15%. You can change the comp rate here to the new amount, or I can go to changes. I'll give them like a 15% increase. You will click calculate compensation, and it will automatically change that comp rate to the new comp rate. Anytime you change salary, you'll have to click calculate compensation. Again, this is in our data entry guide. These are additional steps you'll have to take. You can't just give us the new bi-weekly rate anymore. You've got to put it in, and you've got to click calculate compensation. Any questions on this tab? Okay, I'm gonna keep going next here. All right. Of all the tabs in job data, this one is the one that is the biggest change, as you might imagine, payroll. On our data entry guide, we have the values for each one of these fields and when they should be used and how they should be used. I'm going to try to cover these to the best of my ability, and Ashley's going to chime in if I say I'm wrong, because I'm learning them too. They're still all new to me. So today, you guys are used to seeing pay group A. We used to have pay group B. Well, we have some new values here. And we have 11 of them, where you've got different pay groups. Most of us will be on STA, pay group S statewide. But we do have other groups such as senior judges, state police, they're broken out. We have other National Guard. And these are pretty self-explanatory of when you should be using these pay groups. Okay, and again, I'm gonna keep referring to that data entry guide when based upon certain job codes like prosecutor, junior, magistrate, you should be in this pay group. The conversion row will automatically put employees in these new values. But for changes, if you change a job code to a judge, you've got to make sure to go into the pay group and change them to judge. And again, this will be a lot of this is more non-centralized too, but you guys need to be aware of it. For most of us, we're going to be on statewide. All right, employee type. There are 3 types of employee types: exception hourly, hourly, and salaried. Majority of us are going to be in that exception hourly, unless you're actually hourly, and then salaried. Keep kicking out. Salaried is for, think of that as people who don't go through time and labor. There's very few of those. Conversion row will automatically convert them to salaried. I think some examples are like the ATC commissioners and a few other examples, some agency heads, but for the most part, salaried means exempt from time and labor. Now, tax location code. This is the code that the employee was at county at the first of the year. This is important to keep in mind. You shouldn't change this. This is something that AOS will be working on changing, but you will start to see this tax location code based upon the county that the employee lives in. I think that was asked about earlier. FICA status, you guys should not change FICA status. Only AOS can change FICA status. If a fluid job data got submitted to HR data with a change in FICA status, we'll deny it or push back. I won't go into this today, but you will no longer see combination codes. You will see chart fields. That's a whole nother discussion, but I want you guys to be aware that these will be in here. All right. Absence management. Based upon the pay group you select, you will have choices here in pay group for absence management. And I keep getting kicked out. Okay. As you can see up here, Payroll for North America is the payroll system we're using. Absence management is the absence management we're using. If you're as a business unit that's not using absence management, which most of the time that's non-centralized, you will see this as other. But if they are using absence management, this is the selection. Because I've selected the statewide pay group up here for payroll, my options down here for the absence management group is also statewide. For demonstration purposes, I will show you the direct bill quasi. And then my absence management groups are these choices. Again, the conversion row will automatically put employees in these values, but for changes, you guys need to be aware that there is a pay group for the payroll system and a pay group for the absence management system. And you can see it changed automatically. You should not have to change any of these, but you need to know what they are and what they're used for. It's good information. Are there any questions on this tab? Because this is kind of the big change for 9.2 that we on job data.
Hey, Jeff, I do just want to point out that when folks are on job, not to add chart fields to this.
Any questions?
Is it fair to say we probably should never change anything on this page?
For the most part, yes.
Thanks.
Hey, Jeff.
Yes.
I just want to make sure that everybody knows, definitely do not change or add any chart fields.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, moving on. Yeah, we will definitely deny that, Brandy, if we see those change. All right, employment data. You guys are probably used to seeing this today. This is our compensation or company seniority date. You'll notice it's grayed out. There is no reason for anybody to change anything on this tab anymore. And the reason being is, while you're used to seeing company seniority date, we have created a custom dates page on job data. It's called adjusted service dates. Excuse me. I will get to this tab here in a minute, but for now, we've taken dates from around the system, from this tab and other areas, and new dates, and put them on that custom dates page. So this tab you should not touch. All right, benefits tab. Okay, on this tab, like today, you guys should, well, you will have less access on this tab than I do. So a lot of these fields will be grayed out for you, but you need to know that these are the options for base benefits. You shouldn't be changing them, but know they are. Today, we have a lot of BAS groups. Those are going down to just SOI and terminated. So when an employee terminates, they'll go to the term BAS group. If you terminate an employee through SmartForm, this will automatically change to termination. Now, can I submit a termination through Fluid Job Data? Yes, but you'll have to know to come to this BAS group to change it to termination, and it's going to come to HR Data for approval. We don't want to see all the terms. So that's why we created that smart HR form that automatically changes the necessary fields and doesn't come to HR Data. So yes, while you can enter in a term through Fluid Job Data, you'll have to also know all the other fields you've got to change, whereas the smart HR form would change it for you automatically. You will see fields here that are for benefit purposes. Don't change them. Same thing down here. Any questions?
Stephen wants to know if we're going to still send the Excel spreadsheet for the accrual adjustment.
No, Stephen, and I'll show you the why in a minute. All right, moving on to the next tab. Here is, getting to Stephen's point, here is the adjusted service dates tab. This is a new tab in job data that hopefully will make all our lives easier, so that way we don't have to use an Excel sheet unless in rare situations. With the conversion, everybody, all job data will get a row here that says conversion. I'm going to click show all. What this does is this will be the dates that we use for various different modules, from your accrual date, your original date, your effective date, your adjusted company seniority date. Every time you add a row or a row gets added to job data, a row will get added here. Now, the issue with the dates today, especially company seniority date, as some of you may know, is that date is not effective dated. What that means, if someone changes that date, we lose that previous value. With this new tab, we're going to track all of the changes of the dates. So if somebody makes a change to a date or the system does it automatically for us, we'll see it here. Now I'm doing a pay adjustment as an example right now. Therefore, a row will not get added here. But if I was doing maybe a regular to part-time or a regular to intermittent, I would see a row added here, or intermittent to regular, row added here, and the adjusted company seniority date would automatically change based upon the calculations. As you can see, there are a lot of fields. So if I were rehiring somebody, there would be a rehire row, and then the new adjusted date would automatically calculate, Stephen. If for some reason you felt a date was wrong or needed to change a date to the adjusted company seniority date, field HR could absolutely override that, change the date, and submit it for us to review. We have done extensive testing to make sure, though, that you should not have to click that override button, and that as rows get added, as you can see, this is row number 1, as rows get added 2, 3, and these dates adjust, we shouldn't have to change them anymore manually. Are there any questions on this tab? This is a big change for us.
And those changes will flow automatically into payroll.
Once approved by HR data.
Thanks.
So before, when we were adjusting the date, it would adjust under this company seniority date. Is this the only place it'll be the most accurate?
Yes. Whatever this is here will also be on that tab, but you want to come to this tab to make any changes. But it's our hope that we shouldn't have to make any more changes. Any other questions?
Jeff, does this automatically get populated to the auditor's office?
As they're in 9.2, yes. So all the other modules are using this accrual date. No, the accrual date and jacket, this is now the accrual date.
Just as a technical item, if we are rehiring someone that terminated prior to PeopleSoft, like 1998, whatever, that would be an example of a manual correction that we would have to do here.
That's correct, Stephen. I will tell you that terminated employees up that terminated, I think, a year will have a conversion row, but prior to that, they may not, or if they're prior to PeopleSoft.
Okay.
Now, I will also state that if the company's seniority date is currently wrong, this conversion row is not going to fix it, and we may have to make corrections if we catch them later on. So this conversion row is not correcting all the company's seniority dates. It's merely carrying forward the date we've currently got in the system and will adjust from this point forward. It will not fix old dates. So if the date was wrong in 9/1, that'll be another example of when we might have to make a correction.
Hey,
Any other
Jeff.
questions? Yes.
Jeff, this is Levine. I just want to add to the comment, the question of, does this go over to the auditor's office? Just remind everybody, GAC, the auditor system, is being brought down. So the only place these accrual dates will be are right here on this page.
Thank you, Lavinia. Absolutely. Any other questions? May have to go get my network plug. All right, moving on. In Fluid Job Data, we have the option to add attachments. This is a great place for my example where I'm doing a pay adjustment, maybe to attach the approval email from SHC, so that way HR data knows to approve your pay adjustment. Anything that you would need to further help HR data process your transaction, I would recommend adding attachment here. Next. Okay. New to Fluid Job Data is the Validate button. After you've made all your changes, I want you guys each time to click this Validate button. What the Validate button does is it takes your changes and it runs them through and checks for errors. So for instance, in my scenario, I gave a 15% increase in salary. Had that been above the max of the range, I would have gotten a warning message here. Warnings are simply that. They're warnings, means pay attention to them. I'm going to look at my network. I'll keep getting lagged here. warnings are simply warnings you can click through. If you get an error, you need to take care of it. So as you can see in my situation, validation was successful. I had no warnings and I had no errors. Now, if you have a warning or an error, it will still submit to HR data, but we're going to get it. But please make sure to validate any of your changes prior to going to the last step of submitting. Any questions on this step? Please, please, please click validate. If you get an error or a warning, by all means, reach out to us. We'll be happy to tell you either pay attention to it, change this field or that field, or just submit it and we'll reach out to you. All right, the last step is the summary page. What the summary page does is it looks for all of the changes that have been made by you from the previous tabs. Maybe. This is basically the changes that are being submitted. So you've got your current information. I'll make it bigger here. And your proposed information. So it's not currently a row, and it will have a row effective as 418. And it will show you the changes that you've made. For instance, the comp rate's going from 2807 to 3228. And the annual rate's going from 72 to 83. All these values are changing. If you accidentally change something you didn't mean to, you can go back and change it. But this will show you all the changes that you made. This is also a very similar view, and I can show you guys later, how HR data will get your transactions. HR data does not have to go through each tab to try to figure out what you changed. HR data will get a view similar to this of just your changes. Any questions here?
Jeff Taylor has a question. If you can save it and come back later, or do you have to complete the transaction when you're in there? There's not a save button here.
No. No,
So you'll have to,
not.
yeah, you'll have to complete the transaction when you go in there. Stephen, if you have to go back to a tab, do you still have to click through each subsequent tab? No.
No, you can, once you've got, you can actually, you don't have to go sequential. While it gave you a next each time, you can definitely skip to the tab you want to change and then submit. It doesn't make you go to each tab to submit. So if I know, for instance, my example, of course, I walk through each tab. If I'm only doing a pay adjustment, I can skip right to the compensation tab, make the change, skip to validate, and then submit. But again, I want to encourage you guys, as you're learning this, it's good to flip through each tab to see the information there, because you've got to know which fields you got to change for each transaction.
Jeff, do you want to talk about what page they print for their agency file?
Yep, that would be this one right here. This is what you will print for your agency file and what we will have a similar and ours down in HR data.
I have a question.
Yes, Steve.
So saying is that this 9.2 system is not to be used for record retention. We must print paper.
Until we change the statute, yes.
Thank you.
Yep. And rather than printing off all the different tabs, we recommend you print off the summary tab here, which I've got it blown up, but it is printable on one page when I zoom out to normal size. Any other questions? Good point, Ashley. All right.
Jeff?
Please, yes.
One last question, sorry. Do you print that page before you hit the submit button, or can you do it after?
Both. You can do both, but I would recommend doing it here.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll show you guys how to review transactions here in a minute. So with that, I'll go ahead and submit. I think that's a good segue to see how, we'll show you how you can see what you've submitted. All right, so here is the submission page. It tells you that it was submitted at a certain time. Unfortunately, I was logged into myself, so it's self-approved. However, when you submit something, it will go to HR data. I probably should have used somebody other than myself, but that's okay. Normally, it would go to HR data for approval. Let me log off and do one real quick here as not myself. So you guys can see that. I apologize. So we'll quickly go do another salary adjustment. Pick somebody else. Create job action. Click calculate compensation. Make sure the biweekly is right. I'm going to validate. Validation successful. I look at my summary. Everything looks okay. I will submit. So I logged in, I believe I logged in as Dana Bracey, but the multiple approvers now you will see that it has routed to the HR data staff for approval. Now, this was for Emily Maras. I go back to job action summary. You will see that that now has 2 rows here and that status is in progress. Only one fluid job data row can be submitted at a time. And that's very important, and I'll say it again. Only one fluid job data row can be submitted at a time. There are a few situations, scenarios, where you need to do 2 rows at the same time, like for instance, a return from leave on the same date, and you want to submit 2 job action rows. What we have over here, I'm going to show you guys how to add notes for HR data. Is click the actions button and add notes. Here's where you can add a new note and say, hey, HR data, please also add this row or whatever else you want to tell HR data, put it in here. That has to do with your row that you just submitted. Please keep in mind this is in the system and viewable. So on situations, I'm going to go back. On situations where you need more than 1 row, please add a note. HR data is trained, in our view, we can see those notes as well and know what you're trying to do. You can also look at the approval train, and in this train, you can withdraw your request. So if we've not processed your job action, you can withdraw it here.
So Jeff, if I'm putting someone out on leave,
Any questions
returning
so far?
them, if I'm returning someone from leave and on the same day I have to put them out on short-term disability, I would put that action in there to say, please put them out on short-term on the same day.
Correct. So you would do the 1 row and then add the note.
Okay.
And we would just do that for you.
Okay.
And when I get into how the system does correction on job data, like previous rows, you'll understand why we can only do 1 row at a time, why the system kind of stops it. But for now, just realize you only do 1 row at a time. And if you need us to add a second row, rather than waiting for us to approve this and then doing a second row, you can add a note and we'll look at those notes and audit, say, if you put in there, please add a return from leave, we'll do it.
Hey, Jeff, is it the same for job reclassifications as well?
It is.
Okay.
It absolutely is.
Thank you.
Jeff, can you just go through how to get to that job action summary one more time for me?
Sure. So here's what I'm going to do. So of course, I'm going to copy this employee ID, right? And I'm going to go back to my home screen. So pretend that we've submitted it and all of a sudden we realized we shouldn't have. I'm going to go back to Workforce Administrator, to my Manage Job or Fluid Job data. And you remember this search screen, correct? It remembers the searches that you've done. But if you didn't know, you could put that employee ID in here, hit search, and it'll be right there.
Great, thank you.
So this new job data view will show in progress rows. Now, if you want to view the details of, like for instance, and if you just want to look at what the conversion row did, you can click this arrow, and this is how you will view job data in the future. Maybe. It takes a second because it expands all the tabs. So then here is that row that is historical record. And you will notice that, I believe, I didn't open up a tab. I'll go back to job action summary, and there it is. That's how you view historical rows. If there is an issue with your submission of a row, HR Data has two options. They can either deny the request or push it back. If HR Data pushes it back to you, you will get an email notifying you that your job data row is pushed back to you, and this will say rework, letting you know that you need to rework that data and resubmit it to us.
Jeff,
Jeff, will the, sorry, Stephen, go ahead.
If we have to go back and delete a row, currently we submit a path and say delete, return from leave, etc.
Yep.
Would we just go in here and find that row and just click delete and it'll flow through HR Data, or?
So that will be in our section we talk about corrections.
Okay, I'm with you.
Okay. So right now I'm just adding top of stack, Stephen. When we get after our break, we're going to start talking about corrections and other things, and that's when we'll get into that.
Thanks.
Are there any other questions, Jan, maybe?
I can't remember what I was going to ask.
I have a question, please, Jeff.
Yes.
If the notification that HR Data, that we will get through email from HR Data when they push something back, will it indicate what the issue is?
So for right now, we didn't have time to customize those workflows. So what the email you're going to get is kind of bland because it's just as delivered, but it will tell you, it'll give you the employee ID number. It will tell you that this has been pushed back for rework. And then you can go log in and see that which row it was that we pushed back, and you can probably look at notes because we will have added notes.
Got you. Thank you.
And more likely than not, we might just email you too. We're still working on that process.
Gotcha.
Jeff, Lauren Hawk has a question. If we need to terminate someone from leave, would they do a return to work and manage job with notes for HR Data to then terminate them after the fact?
Absolutely. I think you're starting to figure it out. So as you can see, yes, you can do everything through Fluid Job Data. The smart forms are just a quicker way of doing it, but we don't want to see all your terminations through Fluid Job Data unless it's like situations such as that. Any other questions?
Hey Jeff, it's Kathy. Yep. So if a workflow will be sent, if a transaction is denied, or pushed back, will it also be sent if one's denied? Or do we have to check the system for denials?
You know, it'll send workflows too. I don't anticipate us denying anything because we don't, unless this absolutely shouldn't go in the system, I think we're gonna push everything back.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Ashley, have I missed anything so far?
For attachments concerning pay rate changes in SHC and requiring those. Because that's something we would push back for if they're an SHC agency.
Good point.
Can we just add the SHC approval number, or do you require the attachment?
We'll want the attachment.
And the reason for that is if we had the number, we'd have to go look at that SHC. If you give us that email approval, we don't have to go in and look at through the SHC component. So it'd save us a lot of time and we appreciate it.
If we get an email back or a notification that something needs to be changed, and let's say the person, the HR person is out for 3 days, a week, whatever, does that go to our supervisor as well, or does it just stay with the person who did it?
Good question. Well, hopefully the HR person that's going to be out would go into PeopleSoft and do delegations so that the workflow would automatically go on to whoever they delegated. We have delegations today, and just like in the future, you should be delegating if you have workflow, especially now at 9.2, delegations are your friend. Time and labor, all sorts of things.
Delegations are really easy. If you don't delegate, though, it will still come back to you, even if you are not in the office.
I have a question then. If we don't delegate and there's an error that was pushed back and for some reason we call down to Ashley to resolve, would another person be able to see that there's a pending row?
Yes, absolutely. Did that answer your question, Stephen?
Yes, thank you. Sorry.
It's okay. Any other questions?
I did just want to mention something about Lauren's question. If you do return someone to work and leave notes for HR data to term them, we need to know the action reason code and the last day worked.
Good point, Ashley. And again, we've got that in our data entry guide. So when you're trying to add those rows, it'll tell you to do that.
John DeArmond has a question. What if an HR employee terms, what happens to any errors or pending requests that they may have entered prior to their termination?
Good question. I think we need to test that out, Jonathan. I'm not 100% sure.
If it would be like an involuntary termination, couldn't that supervisor get access to that employee's emails and be able to see notification there?
Yep. I mean, it's similar to how it happens today. I don't think there's anything new about that. It's same situation we have today in 9.1 to be 9.2. I just don't think we have anything new for that. But I can check. But again, that new other HR person could come in here and see the in progress row or whatever else needs to happen. Okay, any other questions? I'm going to show you guys one more thing real quick here. On this main search page, I've been using employee ID. If you don't use employee ID and it's supposed to use search by last name, it will give you all of the possible matches down below for you to find the right person. If there is only one match, it will automatically assume you want that person and take you to the next screen. So for instance, I could select one of these individuals and add a row. But if I know the employee ID number, it's only one choice, it automatically takes me to the next page. So if your search only brings up one employee, it will bring you to this page. If you have multiple options or your search criteria met multiple people, you will get the possible matches down below. And yes, Taylor, there is BU. We got a lot more options now. On job data, BU, huh, right? And what's also nice is that they've got a payroll status, so you can look for disactive in that business unit. Okay. I think we're going to take a 5-minute break. And then when we come back, we'll dive into corrections because that will be an area that'll be new for everybody. So, all right, 5-minute break, everybody.
Okay, so hopefully everyone is back from that quick 5-minute break. Jeff, just let me know once you're ready to go ahead and get started again.
I'll be ready in 30 seconds.
Sounds good.
Okay, I think we've had some time, Sierra. I think we're ready to get going.
Okay, sounds good. Just let me know if you want me to head over to the next slide.
Yeah, please do. We'll just start wherever we're at. All right, so job data corrections. You've seen job data, how to add new rows. We're going to dive into the world of corrections. Today, for job data corrections, you guys submit correction PPAS 9.2. You'll go into job data. You will find the offending row, as I like to call it, or the row you want to change, and you will edit that row that's already existing. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about additional steps you need to take when you are correcting a row that's already in the system or has already been approved. All right. You'll go through the same menu options that you did to add a row. We're going to go that same path, only we're going to search a different way. All right, next here. So remember that search page where you guys saw the new business unit and the new payroll status? At the bottom, you're going to have those two checkboxes. One is for include history. One is correct history. Many of you are used to seeing the include history, but for many of you, the correct history will be a brand new button. In order to change a row that is historical in nature or already on job data, you will have to click correct history prior to searching. All right, next slide. When you do hit correct history, it will show you all of the rows that are currently on job data, as you see here. Now, on this example, though, we've already got two that have been submitted, but we'll show you how to get to that. All right. Let's dive into the demo. Bear with me 1 second. I'll take over the screen, Sierra. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. I am going to go to Workforce Administrator. I'm going to go back to Manage Job. And again, I'm going to find somebody. I got somebody that has a row on here. Let's see if let's look at one of my already used. Yeah, maybe not. It's not a good example. Going to make sure to click correct history, then search. Because it only had one result, it took me the next page where it shows me all of the rows for this employee. There are 8 rows on this employee, CO I grabbed. You'll notice there will be a conversion row on all employees again. And this will be a 5/1 date for our go live. In this environment, we were just testing out as 1/9. I'm going to pretend like this P for P row, we gave them the wrong P for P, and we want to correct it. What you'll notice is that when you search with that correct history button checked, this pencil button or the edit button is now available for you to select. So I'm going to pretend that this pay rate change for P performance is wrong. I'm going to edit it. It gives you a warning that says adding or correcting a historical row will need to be reviewed in the higher data rows. What that means is that, this is a new concept for you guys. If I change the pay rate here, I also have to update the pay rate change on any row after that. And that's what that's letting us know. When you hit continue, the date's going to stay the same. I'm going to use the same action reason. You could change the action reason, but I'm going to keep them all the same. And I'm going to hit continue. I am now on that fluid job data for that row that was already submitted. I already passed the row. Just like before, I can go next through each tab. I can click on each tab, or I can skip to the tab I want to change. If I click changes here, this person got a 1% P for P. If that should have been a 2, I will make that change here. I will click calculate compensation. That will automatically update it. I will come down to my validate. In fact, I may add attachments here, any emails or anything relevant that would let HR data know this is okay. Validate. Validation successful. And I will come down to the submit tab. And for corrections, it will show you the old value and new value. So this is the current information and the proposed. So by going from 1 to 2%, the change percent changed from 1 to 2, the comp rate changed here. Again, here's your summary tab to print off. Change is made, hit submit. Now, this is letting me know with this icon that there are one or more rows to be reviewed. But the correction row I submitted has gone to HR data, and here's the approvers that it's gone to. I'm going to pause here for any questions you guys might have.
Here's a good question, Jeff. Louise Gray is asking, if the pay for performance is wrong and corrections have been made, will a backdate pay automatically and forward the difference to AOS?
It will cause triggers, and I cannot speak to what is automated or not. Brandy, you want to say anything if she's on still?
I am, yeah. So if you had, so the scenario is you had a salary change that you had a prior effective date for.
Yep.
So if we've already processed that pay, then what would happen is on the next pay, those HR transactions would trigger an action on the pay line once we run what we call the retro process in payroll. And so it would go back and recalculate that employee's salary with the hours that were indicated for that prior period, and it will add that adjustment to the pay line. So there's no additional need to send any kind of form to payroll or the auditor's office to make sure that that's calculated.
Thank you, Brandy.
Yeah.
How will manual warrants work if we need them, or are they allowed anymore?
So we have a little bit of different terminology. Manual warrants are what we are calling off cycles in the future. So it just depends on what the item is. Your payroll staff will have had training around all of this. But basically, if you were missing hours, there's a specific process for that to go back and do those corrections and make sure that that's captured in payroll. If you have someone that needs an emergency payment, then yes, there's still a form that's available for you to fill out for the auditor's office, and then they can go ahead and do that off-cycle paycheck. Or ACH. We also can pay what was previously called a manual check or a manual warrant. We can do that with ACH now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good questions. Any more? Okay, keep asking those questions in the chat. We'll try to pause routinely to get those. For right now, I'm going to return to job action summary. What you'll see here is now the status has changed to correction in progress. Okay. That's where all you guys need to do. This is just letting you know that review will be needed by HR data, and we will be carrying that salary forward. When HR data gets this, we will go into this row and review, but that's letting you know that this is pending a change by HR data. Now, if you had not submitted that row and you search for this employee ID, this is what you would see. You could see the notes, you could see the approval chain or withdraw it. Only the person that submitted it can withdraw it. But of course, HR data can deny and push back. We can also push back, and should the HR person leave, we could then deny it. Any other questions on correction? Yeah, Stephen, we'll make the subsequent row updates. It's just letting you know that these are pending a change is kind of what that means. Once we've made that change, this will go away. So I'm not going to go into reasons for submitting corrections. They're very similar to today's corrections, but just please be advised that these will require a little bit more processing time. We're still going to try to review transactions within the same time frame we do today. So our goal is within 1 to 2 days get these all approved. I think it'll be quicker, but we'll find out when we go live. I will tell you guys, for the first time since I've been a state personnel, we are fully staffed in HR data. We have 5 staff now back there, 4 under Stephanie with Ashley New. And so we are staffed ready to review all of these transactions that might be coming our way. So, there will be a learning curve for us as well as you, but at least we are fully staffed and have 1 extra person back there, more than we've ever had. All right. I thought we might spend a little bit more time on corrections, but I guess not, unless somebody has some more questions. Again, I will keep stating the fact, add notes here, add attachments and fluid job data, because if you do something accidentally wrong and you've put in some notes or attachments and we can figure out what you're doing, we're not going to push back. We'll go ahead and make that change for you. But you've got to add the notes, got attachments, so at least we know what you're trying to do. Especially in the beginning with Go Live, we're all going to be slammed with work. We don't want to be pushing back work to you. We want to be able to get that done for you, especially after Go Live. So please add notes so we know what you're trying to do, so we can at least get that transaction completed, especially right after Go Live.
I have one question. If, for example, for that paper performance, so say we change that, say it wasn't the conversion, say there was something else there, would we have to go in and change that next line, or would that go straight to HR data, let them change it?
That was going straight to HR data, let us change it, and then this would let you know that this is gonna be pending our change.
Okay, thank you.
You just need to fix what's wrong, and we will take care of what they call carrying it forward.
Okay, great, thank you.
I will also state that in 9.2, pay attention to warnings, which are just, hey, you need to know, and errors. Errors are bad. If you get errors, submit an IoT ticket if it doesn't let you do something. We still want tickets for issues after go live that are errors preventing you from doing something here. But if they're warnings, pay attention to them, like for instance, over the max, below the min, pay attention to those warnings. Don't just click through them, actually read the warnings. I will, so that is, it's something that I want to make sure you guys, when 9.2 goes live, if you get warnings error, especially in that validate page, either from a correction or from just a new row, please pay attention to those errors. If you have questions about that, be happy to answer them. We'll say, hey, go ahead and submit it. We'll take care of it. Or, hey, maybe go change this field because that's causing that error. You know, a prime example, I think Jaleel pointed out to me, if I'm entering an effective term date, the last work date has to be before the term. Otherwise, it'll error out. Any errors where stuff happens, if you submit something with an error, it will, and Smart HR or anything where, even though we may have set it to automatically hit the database, it will come to us to work that error in HR data. Yeah. I'm going to move on, but we can definitely come back to corrections if anybody has any more questions later on. All right, Sierra, do you want to take the share back over?
Yep, pulling it up now.
Which slide we were on? I need to make sure I'm logged in with the right person. Okay. Position data. We're going to start talking about fluid position data. Today, you guys have reports to access. That's not going away, and you're getting some new additional fields that you can change. So in order to look at fluid position, you would go to this tile here that says position management. It looks very similar to job data, fluid job data. It'll just be on the position side. All right, next. And that's the bigger picture. It says manage positions. So you want to, anytime you want to make a change, you would click that. For right now, there are 3 changes that you will be allowed to make in 9.2 for position management. You will still be able to do reports to changes, but there are 2 additional fields that you can do. One is department change, and the other is location change. And I'll say that again. 492 in fluid position, field HR can change reports to, department, and location. So this page basically shows you the search page for fluid position management. And on the left, you don't have as many search options as you do in job data, unfortunately. So you really need to know the position number that you're looking for, or the reports to, or the position status. So it's a little harder to search on the fluid position, but again, it's very similar. All right, next slide. Once you search for PCN, if that is the correct PCN, it'll automatically come up. You can select it and make the necessary changes on that fluid position. So we're going to dive in and I'll show you exactly what this looks like. Let's share my screen. Okay. So I'm going to go to Workforce Administrator. Instead of fluid job data, I'm going to come down here to Position Management. I'm going to click on Manage Positions instead of Manage Job. Now it's Manage Positions. And you will see my search. I am going to go grab a PCN real quick here. Hopefully it has some history. So it shows you the information for that PCN. I believe if you are one number short, yeah, it has to be the exact number. So the only pain about this search feature. You click on the PCN that you want to touch. And then you will be able to view the historical rows on the position, or this has 15. I'll make this bigger for you guys. Or you can hit the plus button to add a new row. Unlike fluid job data, field HR and non-centralized agencies will not be able to correct history on position. So the edit button will always be grayed out for field HR. You can absolutely go view the rows. You will not be able to submit edit actions on historical PCNs. When you click the plus button to add a new row to PCN, you will notice that it asks for the effective date, sequence is automatic, and the reason code. So most of you are familiar with all of our reason codes. For this purpose, I'm going to do a location code change and hit continue. This brings me to what we call, again, the activity guide. Basically, it's the position tabs now on the side. And you'll notice that all of the fields are grayed out except for department, location, and reports to. These are the only three fields that anybody outside of comp or HR data can adjust. Centralized and non-centralized will both have access to these three fields. Now, you will notice on the left here, we have additional information. It's view only, but it's good to know. You have the option to do attachments. Not in positions, but yeah, there you go. Add attachments. Budgets incumbents. Again, you've got your information down here. Here's your per fund number. And then review changes. So you got your current value and your proposed value. I didn't change anything, so you don't see here. But if I go back and actually change something here, let's change this. And I go back to review and submit. Now you see my change. I'm going to hit submit. And I will talk about this error message in a minute. And it says I'm changing this position of this effective date. It will change comp frequency for any incumbents, blah, blah. It's a warning, not an error. And okay. And it's been successfully submitted for approval. Now, I'm going to go make sure I got that PCN copied. Go back to position details. And you notice how it says, even though it said it went for approval, you'll notice here it said approved. And I can look at that approval chain as blank. Here's why. As you recall, there are three fields that are only available to you guys: location, department, and reports to. As long as you use one of three reason codes, I'll show you again here. As long as you use one of three reason codes, it will automatically go and hit the database and not come down to HR data for review. Those three are update reports to, location code, and reorganization. As long as you use one of those three reason codes, HR data will not see your changes and it will save straight to the database. If for some reason you accidentally selected lateral transfer, you still will only be able to make changes to those three fields, but it's going to come to HR data because we don't want you using that reason code. And it will not hit the database directly. So I'm going to pause right there for questions.
I'll be first. I'm still under my quota. We have DFR, Division of Family Resources, moves positions from office to office quite often, be they vacant or filled. So we would not use lateral transfer. We would just go in and make a department and location code change, and that will flow to the employee record and we're done.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you.
How will this affect underslot positions like an HT2 that we only can do part of the process reports to, and then your team would have to complete it?
Not quite. You guys are getting ahead of me here, so I'm glad you're thinking along those lines.
Sorry, Jeff.
No, you're right. It's good. It's just today you now have to go into fluid job data and make the change there too, not HR data. So if an employee is on override, it's going to be the field HR's expectation that they need to know that they're on override, and then they got to go check there too. And I do believe I'll have to check. I think you get an error message or warning message when an employee's on override, but you still want to go check, make sure that the job data updated as well, especially for overrides.
Would we just put a note on that override change in this case? Or do we have to take the override off, update the position, put the override back on?
So if you once you change the position, Stephen, if the employee is on override, you go into fluid job data, the override will already be on. So then you would just basically take the PCN out and put it back in.
Okay. All right.
Does that make sense? Or just change reports to whatever you want to do.
Yeah. I'm lucky because I've had correction mode before. So
exactly. And this is all new concept. And in our data entry guide, we do cover this scenario of a little bit. I mean, make sure it's all accurate. We're still working on last minute changes and edits, but this should be in the guide on how to go into fluid job data for underfills or employees that are on override. All right, so Ashley had to step out, so let's take any questions in the chat. So Carmen, you asked about access to the fluid position, fluid job data. Shared services will have the same access as field HR. So yes, shared services will have access to all this. Can we backdate effective date or top of, if so, what is the top of, isn't top of stack? Is that, Taylor, is this for fluid position? Is that what you're asking about?
Yeah, so if we wanted to change the effective date of somebody moving to a department or something.
Yes, so so for instance, I added this 420 row. You could have added anywhere as far back as 110. If it's because you can't correct history, so if it's anything older than that, you need to get with HR data.
Thanks. And then my other question was, can we only submit one per day?
If you do, how to put this? Yes and no. You can only have one pending row at a time, be it fluid position or fluid job data. You can only have one pending row at a time. If you submit a change and you use one of those three reason codes of location, reorganization, or update reports to, and it hits the database automatically, you can turn around and add another one right then again because there's no pending row.
So I guess a follow-up question to that, if we need to update the department and location and reports to, can we do that all at once under one code, under one reason code?
Just use the reorg and update all three.
Is there a way to do more than one at a time?
More than one what?
Like more than one of these PCNs at a time? Are we able to do bulk changes? Or do we have to do each one manually?
Got to go into PCN. It's what HR data does now. It's what you guys are gonna have to do.
Jeff, is it the same for vacant positions if you need to change all three?
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you.
When you start getting into the realm of 100 plus, reach out to me, but not until then. That is kind of our borderline of when you're doing about 100 changes or more, we prefer to have GMIS do it. Now, I will tell you, if you've got 50 or 60 and you guys are swamped in the field, and you can reach out to us and maybe HR data can help you guys out. Absolutely. But just kind of use some common sense on where you're at. 5 to 10, yes, please field HR do that. But if it's 50, 60, I'm not going to reach out to GMIS to do a upload, but maybe that's something where HR data is not swamped and we can do that for you, especially if you've got a lot of work going on in the field. Does that kind of make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
All right. I think I've answered all of the questions in the chat. If I missed one, let me know. Speak up. If not, are there any other questions? I will tell you, just for informational purposes, when it comes to positions, we do have some new functionality that, well, as field HR, you won't have access to, but I want you guys to understand how the process works because that general knowledge will help you in your role. That fluid position, while locked down for the field HR to just those 3 fields, compensation division and HR data division will have every field unlocked. Going forward, HR data is going to be working closely hand in hand with Christy Hall's group and compensation division to update position information. So we might find it's easier for the compensation division, instead of doing a comp action form, to automatically go into fluid position, make the changes, and submit them for Stephanie Bradley to review and hit approve. So there may be times in the future in 9.2 where you'll see compensation after approval of SHC or something where they're changing PCNs, maybe changing job codes. They may enter it in for Stephanie Bradley to review and approve, or Stephanie Bradley may just go ahead and enter it in on herself on the position data side. But the people that have access to full position is comp and HR data going forward. Are there any questions about that?
So a comp action list will still be required for those SHC requests that needed them before.
That information will still be required, yes, for your comp person. Now, whether or not it's on that form or not, that's up to them. I don't know if Christy's on or not, but.
Yeah, Jeff, I'm on. Those will still be needed because we're not going to know that information if we're going to be the ones going in to make the change. So those are very helpful to the team.
But your comp, and that's why those need to be important, is because your comp people may, if they are doing this information, they need to know these fields. In fact, they may ask for more fields, right, Christy?
Possibly.
So just like on job data, where on the reports too for supervisor, you got view and current incumbents as well here. Point that out. It doesn't have the name. Any other questions about fluid position?
Will there be a spot on there that shows whether it's double filled or not?
Yes, so if you click view incumbents, there'll be more than one here. I think also on additional information, I think it used to have number of incumbents, didn't it, Christy?
Which one is it? What'd you say, Jeff? The number of incumbents? Yeah.
Yeah. Is it here then?
I
think.
Well, you know what? I guess I haven't paid attention to that, but it usually was at the top and it would say 0 of 1 or 2 of 1, like if it was double
Right.
filled.
Obviously, you can click the view incumbents and see it that way. But I don't think it shows it right now.
Jeff, it does. Up in the left-hand corner, current head count
there you
1
go.
1. Yeah.
Yep, there you go.
Thank you.
So a lot of this information, again, like it's a good example. A lot of this information's it's all the same. It's just kind of moved around a lot. All right, I'm going to talk a little bit next before we get into our last position stuff and do one last quick break. I'm going to shift into navigation. I'm going to exit out of this. I'll just go back to the home screen. I'm going to go Workforce Administrator. So while you have Managed Job, Managed Position, under those you also have, here we go, wrong one, Managed Job, HR Administration. This is what I want to show you. Yeah. So Workforce Administrator, you got HR Administration. This is where you can also view job data today, and you're not really, it's just for view purposes only. And let me zoom out here. You guys will recognize this, correct? So this is how you can view information on a quickly without going through Fluid. And it'll be in a format that you can currently recognize. Now, is job data still in the navigational bar? Yes. Still here. This will eventually be going away and only Fluid will remain. So for right now, even HR data and comp, nobody has access to change here because we're trying to get everybody to use Fluid. But you can also view the old method as well, in addition to the HR administration box.
Is the HR administration box staying or and the navigation is going away? Okay, so just that one's going away.
Yep, yep. You guys are used to seeing this. It's basically just taking it away from the navigational bar to Fluid, which means it's on a tile, not the bar anymore. Same thing with position. Position is also over here in the nav bar. So if you're used to going to organizational development, position management, well, I don't seem to have added update on this environment, but it's still here for you guys to see, as well as the position history. So if you're used to looking at position history this way, the view axis is still there. Any questions about navigation, or anybody want to see how I got to anything I've shown thus far navigational wise?
That last one on position history, it'll still show, because it looked like the old system you just showed us, but it'll still show that information in the new.
Yep. Yep. So, you know, as PeopleSoft shifts to this Fluid, they've kept around the old stuff. It's like this transition period. We know it's eventually going away. So for right now, I really want to encourage people to use the tiles, but understand that if you just want to quickly view information, that old stuff is still there. Any other questions? Okay, we're going to take a 5 minute.
I'm
Go ahead.
sorry.
Go ahead, look.
So did you say that the old view, if you will go away eventually?
Yes, because when we were reviewing the new enhancements for this version of PeopleSoft, we read that eventually the classic job data is going away.
Okay.
And I think we got a year or more.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad we have that transition time now. So it just made sense to push everybody to use the Fluid. Any other questions? Okay, we'll take a 5-minute break, and then when we come back, we will touch briefly on personal data. I believe it's our last topic, right, Sierra? I think so.
Yes,
Okay.
and approvals as well.
And approvals as well. So I will try to get logged in as Ashley so we can see some approvals. All right, 5 minutes, guys. We will give everybody about 30 more seconds, I guess. Okay, is everybody ready? Two last quick topics. The position or personal data, and then we're going to talk about approvals. So let's start with personal data. Personally, HR administrators will have access to update all of the employee and contingent worker information. So we're talking about education, military status, gender, ethnicity, location. In addition to HR data having access, of course, employees through employee self-service, as you guys may have seen through the trainings, can update a lot of this information themselves, and we want to encourage that. However, we know that as HR professionals, employees don't always do that or rely on us, or if situations come up that are one-offs where we need to make that change, we can. Smart forms are also that option that we talked about earlier that can update certain personal data information as well. For my webinar tomorrow, when I talk with the non-centralized agencies, they currently have access to save all information directly into personal data. Going forward, only HR data will have access to change personal data through the modify a person. So it's going to be a big change for my non-centralized agencies that I discussed with tomorrow. They'll be forced to use the Smart HR forms for us for review. So I think that while this change doesn't affect you guys in your centralized HR, I want you to be aware that non-centralized can no longer just add a random employee to the database without someone else reviewing it, or make a change on personal data. All right, next slide. Okay, quickly, I'm going to show you guys. Not a lot's changed here. Let me share my screen. All right. Can you guys see this?
Yes.
Okay, so managers have, of course, you guys have seen through trainings, my team tile and update team information. But as HR professionals, we're used to going through the navigator. Back out a little bit here. So navigator to workforce administration, personal information, and the information here. HR data has, let me grab an employee here, has access to make changes here. This is the information. This change is not changing. You guys will still have access to this. You will notice through our new privacy and security that certain data fields will be hidden, but you have the option to click on it and it will open up. When you're doing smart forms to change the information, make sure to come here to review this information so you know what's already in the system. So that if you're doing a social security change, you can put in the name exactly as it is. I'm pretty sure most of you guys are used to looking at this today. I just happened to grab a contractor. Are there any questions about personal data and how it's going to get updated in 9.2?
I talked about this briefly before with you, and I'm not sure where we landed on it. But will we eventually have some functionality for self-service changes to like preferred name and gender, for example? I know
No.
Okay.
Either one. Or I should say not this time.
Hi, Jeff. Earlier you said that we could expand the social security number. Can you show me how you do that?
Of course, keep in mind that I'm in a test environment, but it will look just like this date of birth. It'll be blue and you click on it. I'm in a test environment, so right now it's not working for that social security number, but that's what you'll do.
Okay, thank you. Oh, I do have one more question.
Sure.
Those of us who have support services take care of the entry of FML and things like that, will we be responsible for entering leaves going forward, or will they still assist us with that?
Stephanie, can you help me with that one?
What was the question?
Ask that again, Kathy.
Yeah, right now Sarah Carrillo assists DWD with entering our benefit, our leaves for FML, short-term disability. Will that still continue, or will we be responsible for doing that now?
Oh, man, who's going to add the row to job data?
Yeah.
No, so responsibilities hasn't changed, but now instead of a PPAP, it is through fluid job data.
Okay.
Sorry, I think when you restated the question, I finally understood.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Let me check the chat here. So Stephen Crady asked about I-9s. Randy, you want to answer that for me? Because I'm not part of my area. Randy Hooten on? She may have hopped off. There is a training guide on how to use the I-9 functionality to enter in I-9 data for tracking purposes, but it's not covered in this webinar.
Yeah, just to clarify, there's some information on how to do I-9s from both the employee side and the manager side through self-service. So each person, whether employee or manager, will see the information in your employee self-service or manager self-service area. So that's where it'll be contained.
Thank you, Marcy. Any other questions on personal information or anything that we've shown up to this date? Okay, is there anything anybody would like to see again? All right, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen because I think our last one is approvals, right, Sierra?
Jeff, are you going to go over like for NDOT employees, that we have to put their CDL physical and their CDL license in PeopleSoft?
Not today, but we can get you that information.
Okay.
Give Sierra a second to get the appropriate slide. So I will tell you again, I mentioned it earlier, I'll mention it again, for approvals, we're gonna try to, in HR data, to stick within a 2-day turnaround. I don't see any reason why we won't be able to keep up with that. But HR data will have a lot more approvals coming to us, as you can imagine now, especially with all of the non-centralized transactions coming to us for review. A lot of the review that we're doing are pretty quick and easy, where we're just making sure that there's not, a person's not already in the system, or that the dates are formatted correctly, or the names are formatted correctly, the addresses are formatted correctly. Pretty quick and easy for us. So while we will no longer have to do the data entry, we will have to do all the reviewing. It should even out to where our time that we spent doing the data entry, the savings there will now allow us to have more time to do the review of all these transactions. All right, next slide, Sarah. See what we got. All right. Most actions, if not all actions, for a job, personal, will require approval review. Very few save the database directly, and that's just good practice. Not necessarily that we're approving people's transactions. It's more along the lines of we're just making sure that there's a second set of eyes, and that with all of payroll now being in our HR system, it's good to have that second pair of eyes, because you may make people make mistakes real easily, and we don't want it affecting their paychecks. So I really want to use the term review, not necessarily approvals all the time, just because that's what we're doing. Is we're just double checking your work to make sure that there's nothing else that we know of that would be an issue with that row going through. The transactions that definitely don't come to HR data are your terminations, retirements, your current EPAS, as you call them, and location codes, reports to changes. Those we won't see. But for almost everything else, it will come to HR data for review. As I showed you earlier, you can, in fluid job data, see pending transactions. That will be, you can add notes, and if you have questions about a pending transaction or need to withdraw it, I showed you how to do that as well. But when you submit something for approval, it'll also tell you who it went to approval for, and you'll see the HR data team there as well. All right, next slide. I think that's it. Okay. Does anybody want to see what an approval really looks like from our end, or do you, I mean, you guys have kind of already seen the in progress. It'll just flip to approve. So anything else anybody would like to see as far as approvals? I think I'll share maybe what it looks like from our end real quick. So let me bring up my environment again. Bear with me 1 second. Let me log off as this person. Hopefully my security in this environment is correct. So this is kind of how we will see it on our end. It will tell us who submitted it, the name, the requester, what's going on with it, and who it was submitted by. So we know who to reach out to based upon who submitted the row. For instance, this one was a change job data for this individual. It was a termination. We can go in and view the error on our end to find out why it erred out. And you see here where it says error. And the last date worked cannot be greater than the effective date. So when I did that smart form earlier, I caused an error because the last date worked was after the effective date. So HR data can open up that template. Hit continue. Change this to the 1 day before like we do now. HR data can fix that. And now it's done. I go return to manage transactions, it's off. HR data has taken care of that error for the field. And this is kind of our work list that we work from for anything that comes to us. So this tells us what the form was. Like for instance, this was that name, SSN, date of birth change I did earlier. We can search for matching persons. So if it was a hire, we could go search for matching. If not, we could open the template, review it, and then update the personal data. But this is how we are going to manage transactions on our end. Any questions? So if you see something that errors out, just know we will see it too, and we'll help you work through it. If you know what you did wrong, you can always go in the job data and withdraw it and redo it. And it will pop up, it'll remove from our work list, but eventually we will get to it and try to help out figure out what the errors are that are going on with it. Some of the reasons for errors, especially for like non-centralized tomorrow, when I talk to them about new hires, if there's a matching social or matching possible name, they'll come to us, that type of thing. Any other questions?
Yeah, Jeff, this is Marcy. I just want to emphasize, in addition to the document that you guys put out for fluid job data, JAM is full of resources. So all of the job aids are out on JAM. If you go there, it says coming April 4th. If you click on that, you can go into any of the different areas and see all of the different job aids. And so between your training, the job aids, and the manual, you're going to have everything that you need to actually figure out how these transactions work. But I just want to put that out there.
Very good point.
You had mentioned like, that you guys would help us out. Are we, and being out here in the field, do we call an individual person? Is there that line that we call so that we get whoever, or how do you want us to do that just to not bombard you guys?
I will tell you that as good policy, there'll be me and Ashley, of course, and we don't want every phone call.
Mhm.
But I have an expectation, and I think Ashley and everybody else does, that you should have at least gone in the system and try to look yourself first.
Right.
So I don't want to receive the calls and saying, hey, where's this at? And someone not try to at least go in there and see on that employee and fluid job, does it still show up in progress, or does it show approved already? A lot of times we'll get calls about things and we've already taken care of it and no one's even looked at it.
But like if there's an error and we know like something we can't fix or something we need help with fixing, that's what my.
Exactly. So what you can do then is absolutely, if it's an immediate need, call us. If it can wait just a little bit, do an IoT ticket and say route to HR data for errors and more break fixes. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So while we don't expect to have HR data tickets for data entry, we do expect to have tickets for problems.
Okay. So
if
do
you're-
that route really instead of trying to just call you.
Unless
Try
it's
to
an
wait.
yeah.
Okay,
But if it's immediate need, please, we're here for you.
thank you.
But with us not having all of those IoT tickets for data entry, the tickets for issues will be a lot easier for us to see. And for go live, Ashley and I will be working the tickets to allow the HR data entry staff to keep on the task of all the new hires we've got to get in the system. Good question. Anything else?
The question, Jeff, there are a couple questions related to W-2s for former employees, and will they still have access to print off their W-2 in the system going forward? I'll admit I don't know the answer to this.
Former employees being terminated employees.
Terminated or separated in any way.
Yeah, so they will not have access to print off self-service W-2s because we cut off their Active Directory, so they wouldn't have a way to get into the network. So those can still be printed though by agency contacts or AOS. And anybody that has consent in the system to see their W-2s electronically, upon termination, it gets reset so that a W-2 is automatically mailed as a part of that process.
Thank you, Brandy.
Yep.
Were there any other comments in the chat, Marcy?
Nope, that's all I see right now.
Okay. Next steps. Let's go on next slide, please. So again, if there's anything you want to see again today, please reach out to me. Email me. If you want to know which guide covers a certain topic, I can point you to that job aid. So please reach out to me with questions. Anything, that's about it for today, unless somebody else wants to add on the topic or have more conversations. We're a little early on time here.
Okay, I got one more question.
Shoot.
How was your Easter, Jeff?
I didn't have one. Has everybody looked at the HR data entry guide? I really want to make sure it's 72 pages. But you can click through the section you guys need to see.
No, that's this weekend's chore.
I will tell you that we have revamped that data entry guide where we made sure that we included all the modules. We've put out the best, we think is the best version we have so far. I'm sure there are still some things that we got to work on to make that better. If you see something not covered in that data entry guide, reach out to me. We will get it added. There's just so much now. I think it's up to 72 pages, 73, something like that. So if there's an area that's missing or you think could be clarified, please reach out to Ashley New and myself, because we're going to keep working on this data entry guide right up until even after go live. All right, last call for questions, because I don't want to cut off too early if people have questions.
Yeah. A lot of folks are asking about JAM. The job aids are located in JAM. If you go into SAP SuccessFactors, it's one of your drop downs. So everyone has access to it there. You can click on it and go right into the job guides.
Cool. Thanks, Marcy. All right. Well, with that being said, we'll give you guys some time back today. I appreciate everybody being on this call. Tomorrow we'll be talking to the non-centralized agencies, a lot of the same information, just to be a little bit newer for them in more respects. So thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
And really quick, I just want to add that there will be a live question and answer session on the 25th as well that you all are free to join with any remaining questions. And we will also be sending out a document with all the questions asked in today's session at a later date. So thank you all for attending and thank you for being so interactive. And thank you, Jeff. This was great.
Terrific job, Jeff. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.
Super awesome. You did a great job, Jeff, and thank you to Ashley as well. Anybody that helped you put this together, thank you.